Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live on Sportswire Radio. We are on our internet radio station. We are also now on YouTube and Twitter. And to get the night started, we're going to talk all things related here for a little while to the world of wrestling, WWE, AEW, some returns, and plus much, much more, and get you ready for Crown Jewel with two of our guys here. He's back by popular demand. He is the host of the Be More Talkative podcast, and his name is Mr. TBK, aka the Baltimore Kid, and he's our resident wrestling expert here. Dabbled very briefly in trying at it. He is also the host of the Hockey Fan Chat. His name is Mr. Randy Dillon. And fellas, how are you? And happy Friday.
Doing
Doing
okay.
well. How are you guys?
Doing
I'm
good.
doing great. Obviously, back to be with you guys here. I was going to start off with Ric Flair, but I'm going to start off here with as I usually do here with you guys, with the end of SmackDown. We're getting ready for Crown Jewel next Saturday. And, judging by the chants, I know we've been through this dance now for over 1,100 days, but is this finally, next weekend, the end of the Roman Empire? Or do we expect Roman Reigns to continue his years-long dominance?
Personally, I'm going to say the dominance is going to continue. Listen, LA Knight, he has the momentum. Even watching some of the segments, I started to think, are they really going to give the title to LA Knight and continue this rise? But I really think if they really want to make you a star in the WWE, what can you do without the title? When you have the title, it's great, but it's always what you can do out. And I think this is where we're going to see LA's shining point after Crown Jewel. What can he do from there?
What do you say, TBK, to that?
Yeah, I think if anybody was going to have the title by now, it should have been Cody. With as meteoric a rise as LA Knight's career has become in the past couple months, I respectfully, he's still paying his dues. There's no way that they're going to take the title off Roman. Especially, I just not at Crown Jewel.
Okay, but I have to ask this question because it's been over 3 years. But when then? I mean, we're at a point where we see Roman, we go through this dance, we see him periodically. Sure, it's a big deal. We've seen him the last couple of SmackDowns. We'll probably see him next week. Obviously, Heyman was playing along with the phone. But I mean, when will it be? I mean, realistically, I agree with you, TBK. Cody had the moment. Cody had that moment. We got that. LA Knight's come on the rise here, and you judge by the chance. He's getting there. Is it too soon? I don't know, but when will eventually this run come to an end?
You know what, Tom? I was actually thinking about the last few weeks, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a theory here. I honestly think Roman was never supposed to lose the title because there were the reports saying Roman and The Rock were booked for WrestleMania in LA. I think because The Rock fell through last second, they thought Cody right now has momentum. We're hyping him coming back. Let's put him in there and let's try this 1 year cycle. Because I honestly think Cody is going to win next year, and I always think that was the original plan.
What do you say? You're nodding your head there, Baltimore Kid. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Like, the match that everybody has been wanting to see has been Rock and Roman. Due to the whole actor strike and all that stuff, we've gotten teases of The Rock, but it's just that obviously is not going to happen. I think we're well past that. Again, what LA Knight has done thus far and the crowd responses for God's sake, he's the biggest pop of the night every SmackDown now.
100%. 100%. The last like 2.5 months, he has been by far and away the biggest reason to watch SmackDown.
Like I was saying to somebody else, I believe, we're not there yet, but the yeah movement is very, very close to being the next what, like and you just give it a little while and it very well could be. And then if you slap a championship on him, whew, but I just don't think we're there. Just not yet.
It's an interesting conversation here, and I want to say hello, obviously, to somebody we know here, one of our favorites, Mr. Ron himself. Ron is tuned in. You know him very well as well, Mr. Baltimore Kid. All right, but speaking of people that have returned due to the writer's strike in Hollywood, and That is John Cena. And I don't know about you guys, but am I getting the sense that Crown Jewel could be the end of this Cena return here, or what? What do you guys think about that?
I think it's hard to say. I think there definitely is a case where this is the could be the end of Cena's return. But again, if the writers' strike, there's no indication of this is going to be end. I could definitely see Cena continuing with it until they have an idea. Because I know a few weeks ago there was a rumor saying, "Oh, they
Yeah,
can't."
it looked like he was going to be really close to ending there, and then it just, unfortunately, the talks kind of subsided, and and Cena pretty much, as we know at Fastlane, said, "Well, as soon as the writer's strike ends, bon voyage." But then you also have to think about it. And one of the reasons I brought it up is Cena is obviously alluded to his age and how much more he can take, and almost in a way, maybe that's how The Rock, we really won't see him, because if you think about it, in the last 10 years, how many matches he really had? One? Two. I mean, so because with Cena, my question is, he's now 45 and up. I mean, doesn't this run have to and eventually come to an end?
I honestly think it's going to end, if there's any time, it's going to end after this year Mania, because that's going to be the 20th anniversary of his first Mania. And he's been a part, I think, almost every Mania in every way other than a few. So I do think if the writer's strike continue, then he's good till Mania, and then they won't. Then he's going to be booked
Well, I
up till
don't listen.
Mania.
I'm a movie guy, Randy. I really hope that the writer's strike doesn't last till Hollywood, because these actors, they can't promote their movies. So I mean, I would hope that's a long time for that. Almost mirrors, for those that remember, in Major League Baseball when they went on strike back in 1994. They were on strike for just about, I think, 8 months. It was. That would mean we're going on about 8-9 months, even longer than that. So let's certainly hold that thought there. But for you, the Baltimore kid, I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Is this the end of Cena, you think, at Crown Jewel, or you agree with Randy that maybe we see him for a little while longer?
I mean, I think we kind of have to take him at face value at this point. I think he meant what he said. Once it's over, then he'll be on his way. But for right now, he's got all the crowd momentum. People are happy to see him, which at one point in time people were not. so if you're John Cena, you gotta be loving this right now.
Yeah, the circle. I always say it's almost like my 5th grade graduation song, "The Circle of Life." The circle of life has definitely come forward for John Cena, because let's think about it. We're all pretty much in the same age range. I mean, Cena for about 9 or 10 years. I mean, it was Cena sucks, and half the other chant would say, "Let's go Cena." And now it's almost like the fans are just really behind him. It's almost like that. I don't know if he can top this in terms of just how much the fans appreciate him, which again, we never would have thought this, even I'd say 5 years ago even.
Yeah, I think it's right place, right time too. Because if you look at past events with Adam Edge making the jump to AEW, the untimely passing of Bray Wyatt, to have that familiar face, to have that big presence back on the show, somebody that I think WWE obviously at this point is very comfortable knowing that John can bring those feelings back in a crowd, even if just for a moment. And I think it'd be very foolish of him right now to just be like, all right, I'm done.
Well, right now, I mean, he said pretty much that he's going to continue to stay because, well, obviously he can't go back to work. So we will see him. It's just, to me, a matter of what the body can hold up, because we really haven't seen Cena, I guess you could say, in a quasi full-time capacity. And I would say, 4 years it's been, give or take, about 4.5 years that we've seen him now. We've seen him for a couple of months, and, we see him regularly here. Even house shows, he's done a few. And this is going to be the biggest match of Solo's career. Yeah, I think that's an obvious one here. And Cena also hasn't won a singles match in 5 years. So both guys actually, there's a lot riding on it here. And we'll definitely talk a lot about Crown Jewel next week on the show, because we'll actually have the three of us will be together for the first half of the show. But in the second half of the show, the usual sports report guys, we're actually going to be preempted, because we're going to be doing wrestling coverage from our friends over at XCW. They have their big Halloween Harvest show. So if you're a part of the regular crew, you're going to be basically getting a week off. But if you're the three of us, we're actually going to be going on. So we're going to be on the air for a little while, and we'll certainly let people join in the conversation with that. All right. So I guess since I did hear AEW mentioned, I should bring it up because obviously, speaking of the usual, I guess, person that Tony Khan has found a way to buy. And this one, I guess maybe it wasn't a surprise. Maybe to some it was. But the Nature Boy Ric Flair has arrived to AEW and just in time, I guess, for Sting's retirement tour. So I have to ask you guys this latest one here that Tony Khan has been able to snatch away from the WWE, and the Nature Boy Ric Flair has made, I guess, his long-awaited debut here in AEW. And, what do you guys now think of this latest one?
Well, I think Flair makes history of being almost in every single wrestling promotion there ever been. WCW, NWA,
NWA, WCW, WWF. We're gonna go down that road. WWE, AEW. I mean, I think Major League Wrestling. I think MLW might be the one that he hasn't been in.
Oh, I don't mind the move Flair coming in, especially with Sting's retirement, with the career they've had. The only thing that I'm gonna knock here is people have come out, even they've said, we're not going to bring in these legends. We don't want these legends in AEW. They go ahead and bring Ric Flair. Now there's reports of him having maybe another match with Sting.
I find that so, really? We're going to have Flair now on major American TV? I mean, my first thought is that, Randy, is this a desperate ratings ploy?
Could be, but, listen, AEW's ratings, they've been up and down. Last week, they did really good against the World Series. This week, they didn't really have the World Series with the NBA to go against, and their ratings definitely fell. I think definitely the Sting retirement, they're going to use this for a rating poll. There's only so much you can do with how long it has, but I don't know if Flair is really the guy you want there right now to be pulling the ratings, because at this point, people, I think, are just saying, just keep him off TV. I don't mind an appearance here or there, but for long term,
that was always and before I get to TBK, that was always the argument with Hogan. If when Hogan would come back into WWE and he was good, for the occasional appearance, the occasional shot in the arm, but then when you used him so much, you lost the attraction, you lost the luster. Brock Lesnar's another example of that. Certainly The Rock. We love and think about The Rock so much because The Rock, we see him how many times on the air, and it's an interesting point there, TBK. I mean, Flair, are we going to see Flair regularly on AEW TV? Maybe. Is it a ratings ploy? Like I say, maybe. But I would think the longer and more we see Flair on AEW TV, that wears off. But what is your overall impressions here of Flair, I guess, finally making his long-awaited debut here in AEW?
I think it's pretty much like Randy said. I think, it was just time. He's been everywhere else. It was time he made an appearance, and it's and some could even say maybe it was AEW's way of going, all right, you guys pulled out The Undertaker. You guys pulled out The Rock for a surprise. Here's Rick, and it's kind of like, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, but I feel like Flair, I know Flair is basically like the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, but I don't look at him like The Undertaker coming in and closing NXT. That was a big deal, right? Because The Undertaker is one of those guys that's an attraction. Flair, as great as what Flair has done in basically being almost a role model or somebody that people aspire to be, I don't see him in that same breath. I mean, am I wrong?
Maybe not so much anymore. Sorry, Randy.
No,
maybe not so much anymore. But again, I think they who knows that for all we know, Sting may have pulled some strings and been like, hey, if I'm going out, I want to go out with a guy that I have history with. But it could be that simple.
Add that to TBK. They have a long time for Sting's retirement. We're talking March next year.
Mm-hmm.
How I would maybe more expect this a little bit down the line when his retirement maybe a fewer months away, maybe in the new year. You still have maybe 5 months to go in your
5 months, I'd say about 5 months.
Ric Flair right now, it's definitely is interesting what they're going to do. And to the point to the Undertaker, yeah, they brought in Taker for NXT, but Taker kind of always gave that acknowledgement whenever he worked with kind of that push. We saw it on his 30th return with LA Knight. He kind of gave that push to Bray Wyatt. I think he gave the acknowledgement to Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes. Like Flair, Flair, I don't know, can really put over talent at this point.
But that's my point. But that's exactly my point. Flair, to me, like, if you're going to use him on TV, like, he's not going to all of a sudden just rush out and get hundreds of thousands of, like, diehard Undertaker fans who were Undertaker fans in the Attitude Era or way back 30. I see it. Or Undertaker fans like 30 years ago, or even Undertaker fans in the Ruthless Aggression Era. Like, Flair is not going to all of a sudden pull. In politics, we always use the term, you have to pull people out to win. You have to get your base out to win. Ric Flair is not going to all of a sudden motivate, at this point, 100 or 200,000 people to run and go and watch on TBS, Dynamite, or any other shows we're going to see him on. That's my point.
Yeah, and it's an absolutely fair point. Because, I mean, at this point, I think that Ric Flair is good for the obligatory crowd. Woo!
Yeah.
And that's about it. Again, it's another, I don't know. Would you guys go as far as to say it's a cheap pop tactic?
Absolutely. I think AEW, unfortunately, they've done this where they'll bring someone in for maybe a few weeks to get that cheap pop. We saw with RVD, they bring him in, they bring him out, they bring him in. I think DDP was there. Jake the Snake Roberts
Jake was there for a while. Jake had a long extended, run there for a while with
earlier when they started off, but definitely we've seen where they try to get these cheap pops to think this is going to help their attendance, their rating, and I think it comes down to their marketing, how they kind of throw this up, because it's always, we have this big surprise every week. It's just like, okay, what's the surprise this week to get the attention?
I think that was also mentioned on one of our podcasts here. We play on Sportswire Radio on an internet radio station, the Giving Receipts show with the guys Jaden and Fletch, and they were talking about that. AEW, they have a hard time drawing in venues versus WWE. I mean, they're going to certainly have a challenge when it comes to, let's say, these particular shows that they're going to run more often. I mean, listen, WWE has added 24 new shows, I think, for live events in 2024. AEW has added shows, but WWE is in venues that are, about twice what AEW is. So we'll certainly see what happens here, and we'll be with the regular sports report. Guys, in about 10 or 12 minutes here, we're here with TBK, the Baltimore Kid. He is heard here also on the link below, the Be More Talkative podcast. He's also going to be on here with a marathon of his shows right after we're off the air here. And also Randy Dillon, we've been playing the NHL season preview with him and Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter. The guys have been talking about some of the things here to see in the season. Obviously, when we'll get warmed up a little bit more on Sportswire in the coming weeks into the NHL, and Randy does a great job covering it. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryson. Okay, so anything else you guys are watching here in terms of WWE, AEW? Obviously, Drew McIntyre is challenging Seth Rollins. I don't know what to make of that. Jade Cargill certainly is being built up for something big. Bianca Belair is back. What are some of the other things you guys are watching?
The one thing I'm watching in AEW, because we've heard these announcements, Will Ospreay is going to sign when his New Japan contract.
Yeah, Will Ospreay. I mean, that was a big topic this week. What happens with him? Yep.
Where's MJF contract coming up? Because this has been really shut. They haven't really said anything. They made the big announcement with the Young Bucks, Omega, Hangman, Adam Page earlier, and his contract coming to an end here soon, and there hasn't been anything. I would assume if he would have signed, they would have made an announcement. And we're getting to the final stretch here, especially with the next pay-per-view, Full Gears. Are we going to see him drop the title?
Didn't they add one December 30th? There's a special December 30th one in Long Island here now.
Yes, they did. So they have a few pay-per-views before that, but you would think, we've heard the talk with WWE, Drew McIntyre needs a new contract.
Well, he's coming up in, I think, April now.
Yep. April's coming up. I think there's a few others as well that need a new contract.
AJ Styles, I think, is one of those names, I believe, as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely a few, and you hear the buzz, but with MJF, it's really been hushed here, and I'm just wondering, he's one guy, you looked at kind of the crowd that followed Cody, the one that's been close to him, Jay Cargill, we saw Brian Pillman Jr., Ricky Stark, now they've even talked about him maybe jumping ship after that. MJF, I would be one definitely jumping ship if he's not signed.
What do you say on all that, TBK?
Oh, I mean, MJF's been plugging it forever. We're right around the corner from the bidding war of 2024. So, I mean, obviously, it would be a well, yeah, no, it would be a terrible loss for AEW. It would be a monster pickup for WWE. I mean, some could go as far as to say that MJF has even become the face of AEW. So if you lose someone like him, goodness, I hope Rick's got a couple tricks up his sleeve. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, oh man. So yeah, I mean, I guess these next couple months will tell all pretty much.
I think it's interesting because now, in a way, if you think about it, this is the first time that really between AEW and WWE existing that you are seeing wrestlers go back and forth. And now you have these other guys like Drew McIntyre certainly got extended because of the injury. He originally said he wasn't going anywhere, but that's been quiet. AJ Styles is a rather fascinating one because here was a guy that started late in WWE. And, you think about his last 2 years that, obviously he hasn't really amounted to much in the earlier run. And then you have conversely MJF, and then you see other people go back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see. But real quick, I mean, what do you guys make of a Drew McIntyre as an example? A guy who had to me, I always felt like during the COVID run, really had a tough run as champion. Kind of one of those, when you look back in wrestling history, because of the pandemic, the no fans, the no anything, the no live shows, couldn't interact with people. That's like one of the most probably underappreciated runs a champion will have. And, what do you think about him? Is he AEW bound or am I missing something?
I don't know. This is Drew McIntyre definitely is one of those guys who has shown he'll leave W and he came back stronger than ever with the reputation. I feel for him, he might be one of those people where he goes to AEW and then he's gonna get stumbled on. What do I kind of do there? Where do I kind of get placed with everyone?
That's the problem. We've been speaking about Randy for 2 years on Sportswire. All these guys come into AEW, and by and large, sure, they make the big run, and then afterwards, it's like they get lost in the shuffle. I mean, they're hinting now. It seems like Chris Jericho is hinting at Paul White finally really wrestling in AEW. What has he had? Like 2 matches in AEW so far? He's been in the company for what, 2.5 years? I mean, it's like this is what AEW really, to me, is where they've kind of stumbled is, sure, they sign all these guys, they bring them in, but after a few shows, with the exception of what, maybe Christian Cage, the rest of them kind of get like pushed to the side.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely I think that's where I think a lot of people are looking at it, where you have, I think AEW, they have an advantage with doing all this show, letting the wrestlers go out where they can kind of go get them. But I think for a wrestler, if you really want to build and be one of those top guys, is AEW going to place to be? Because listen, Chris Jericho, I don't think going anywhere anytime soon. Same with Christian. Adam Copeland, Edge, we'll see. He's going to be there around for a while. Listen, Adam Cole, they pushed to the moon since he returned from injury, and I think they're going to do the same thing there again.
Well, he's had hard luck with injuries now, if you hear the latest.
Look at a guy like Ricky Stark. He's always gotten a few wins and gets the momentum, but then kind of got pushed to the side. And now in a tag team with Big Bill, where really he was doing some great singles work with CM Punk and Bryan Danielson.
Keith Lee was the one we spoke about. Keith Lee has to be the biggest miss. Miro early on did well.
Malachi Black, Samoan Joe.
Malachi
Claudio. Like, I know they have Ring of Honor there, but some of these guys, they get pushed there and then they give the title up and they disappear. It's like, and then you lose kind of track of the guys they have there. Guys like I said, Ricky Stark, Jungle Boy, Jake Perry, Darby Allin. I really think if it wasn't for Sting, Darby Allin would be relevant. Same with Sammy Guevara. If it wasn't for Jericho, he wouldn't be relevant.
Yeah, I think certainly Darby benefited more so maybe than Sammy because Darby certainly had some moments. But for you, TBK, before I move on here to a few closing thoughts with Randy, you have any thought on some of these things with AEW?
Well, not on AEW, but on Drew for sure. I honestly think that the best is yet to come from Drew. Honestly, the COVID run was absolutely heartbreaking. Nobody worked harder during that time than Drew McIntyre, and to see everything that he's overcome, to see every ounce of work that he's put in, I think we're right around the corner from a major heel turn. I think they've been teasing it. I think that revitalizes Drew a little bit, gives him his edge back. And honestly, if they're going to have him work a program with anybody, Seth is the right choice. I didn't really understand or like the whole Shinsuke Nakamura thing. I'm a fan of Shinsuke, but it wasn't great. And I think right now that Drew he's got much more left in the tank, much more left to prove, and I'm excited to see what they do with him. And for God's sake, I hope they make the right choice.
Well, we'll certainly find out. Drew, again, as I think we all agree, that run when he had the championship during the COVID era, I mean, really an underappreciated run just because of the circumstances here in the world. And we'll see if he can wrest the title away from Seth Rollins, who, I mean, has been dealing with some nagging injuries. And I think that's fascinating. And I kind of partially agree with you. I don't think most people really believed that Shinsuke could take the title, although there was some great matches they had. But I think Shinsuke was kind of too far behind to be believable. If you are going to build back Drew up, a heel turn would be good, and maybe he'll stay. And I want to get to a few quick comments from our boys over at the IMF. They just had their Highway to Hell show, and also Anthony Steele. Yeah, right. Anthony Steele might be getting picked up at a WWE 2K game, but certainly Anthony Steele. I'm going to be kind on that because I'm sure he'll be back on Sportswire, so I'm going to really plead the fifth on some of the Anthony Steele thoughts. Yeah, Randy, Anthony Steele is a guy, he's kind of you love him or you hate him. Most people who are in underground wrestling hate him pretty much, but he's a phenomenal in-ring talent. He just, unfortunately, promoters think a certain way about him. I think that obviously we enjoy having him on the show, but there's a lot of promoters out there that do not think much of him, and he tends to go in the business for himself, some may say. I'm trying to be really as down the line as I can. And do you have Omen and Soldier on your podcast coming up?
Yes. I as far as I know, it could be just Omen and Soldier. It might be the
Dirty
whole
Donnie.
group. I'm still waiting.
Okay, so maybe you'll have Dirty Donnie. Maybe you'll have the resident rock star, Sean Jovi. I highly doubt Sean Jovi's going to be on that podcast because Sean Jovi really doesn't, really talk too much on these podcasts. I mean, certainly the WCE guys, I'm going to certainly, again, plead the fifth on all that. So I wish them, obviously, well. We were actually supposed to have a segment with some of those guys, but I've been very busy these past few weeks. But I'm sure we'll get them on and the rest of the IMF guys. And please follow the IMF on YouTube out there at IMF Wrestling 666. Also _on Instagram, IMF _wrestling. So Randy, I'm going to give you. Yep. Before I do anything, you're getting the whole gang. So you're getting all the different guys. I guess you're getting the DKW guys. Even you're getting Darkron and Matthew Forsaken. So you're getting even some of the newer members. So lucky you. Congratulations. You won a lotto ticket. So. Obviously, Randy, I'm going to give you the floor now because the regular guy's going to come on here shortly, and we'll get ready for all the sports talk in the world. So I give you the floor, Randy. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? Floor is yours.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Just going to end it off on an NHL note. I'll hit each division quickly as we've gone through 2 weeks of the NHL season. About 9-10 games play, gave my thoughts so far in the Metro. As expected, everything I think going accordingly, but the Philadelphia Flyers, give them credit, second in the Metro.
Yeah,
they played some great
a couple
hockey.
of big wins so far.
The Devils, they have a little bit of a goaltending concern, but they have the firepower to make it through. In the Atlantic, Tampa Bay is hanging on. The one team that you got to keep an eye on is the Ottawa Senators. I think the hot seat is there for DJ Smith. They did a lot of.
They made some big moves in the offseason. They were a team that. And you and Justin thought that they could compete for a playoff spot this year.
Yep, so definitely them struggle there. The Detroit Red Wings, Alec DeBrink has been a great pickup so far. So that division going along as we thought. And Central, a little bit more competitive than I thought. Like you got Arizona up there, I think, in a wild card right now. The Chicago Blackhawks putting on some wins here and there when I thought they were going to be bad, but the top teams are hanging out there. So all teams right there. And then in the Pacific, boy, if you're a fan of the Alberta teams in Canada, the Flames and Oilers are doing awful right now. Where the Edmonton Oilers,
It's still
Stanley
early,
Cup
though.
favorites.
It's still early. You know, I know everybody's getting excited on Arizona, the Blackhawks, but still, we've only just gotten to 10% of the season so far. Still only 10%.
Yeah, I know that, but I think the first month of the season, I always say you have to stay around that 500 range.
I agree with you on that. That I agree with you on, because I always go back in 2017. The Islanders got off to a horrendous first 2 months of the season, and they wound up missing the playoffs by a point. And they caught up all the way. They won, I think, the last 7 games of the regular season, won 2/3 of the games after they made the coaching change. But the first 2 months, they were atrocious. So I do agree with you partially.
No, exactly. I think with Edmonton as well, more on Edmonton than Calgary. Edmonton, the expectation is a Stanley Cup.
I
And
agreed
right
on
now,
that.
they don't look like a Stanley Cup team. They have some problem they got to work out. And I would say in the next week or so, they have to figure this out. Otherwise, they're going to be climbing uphill all season.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do think as now the calendar goes into November and we get into U.S. Thanksgiving, that's always to me, you know, it used to be Christmas. Now it's to me U.S. Thanksgiving because of the competition. So I definitely think that we'll be talking about. Also, Buffalo's a team everybody's kind of been high on also in the Eastern Conference. Buffalo's
They're a bit
team.
struggling there.
Yep.
They've lost they have the firepower, but they've lost they lost a big game tonight to New Jersey in a high octane game.
Well, that was one of the reasons I mentioned them, and the Islanders saw them recently, and we want everybody to follow Randy on YouTube and Twitter at Randy Dillon, and also, boy, you're going to get Sean Jovi even. You know, I wonder what that podcast is going to be like. I'm sure we'll hear it here on the internet link that we have here on Sportswire temporarily. Also, Randy's show we can also hear on the link, and that'll certainly be an interesting one. That might be almost like root canal with some of those guys on there. But hopefully they go, well, you know what it is, Randy? Some wrestlers, I had this conversation. We had a guest earlier today who's a pro wrestler, a guy Rico Justice for one of the UK companies, and you know, he did okay. I mean, it was better than Sean Jovi and Craven Rage on Sportswire because he's a pro wrestler. He can kind of, you know, at least he can kind of punch his way out of an awkward moment. But, you know, some guys in wrestling, they can't talk. And, you know, certainly there are some guys that have come onto Sportswire and, well, they can't talk. But we'll certainly see. I hope for your sake, TBK, it'll go over great, better than some of the shows on Sportswire. Randy, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week because we will be together, the 3 of us here in our regular spot next Friday. But the rest of the Sports Report guys, they will certainly be not with us, but for reasons we mentioned. So thank you, Randy, as always. Looking forward to previewing Crown Jewel, talking about a few other things in the world of the AEW, WWE, Impact, and who knows what else. And we'll talk with you next week.
Sounds great, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, that was Randy Dillon, co-host of the Hockey Fan Chat, our resident NHL and WWE expert, and here with us, back by popular demand, certainly. I hope the tears have been wiped from him after the New York Liberty's heartbreaking loss in the Barclays Center for the WNBA Championship. That is the brute force, Mr. Bradley Weiss. Also, the brute force probably still a little bit sad about his picks in the NFL Fantasy League. I know we're waiting for a couple of guys here to join in, but the brute force, how are you doing there, my friend?
I'm doing great, Tom. I mean, I know that the picks were definitely a struggle over the last week or so, but things have been going well. Definitely had a great time at the Nassau Coliseum today. Was doing a Long Island Nets clinic, and we had our fan fest for the Long Island Nets season. So it's been good times. You know, we're hoping to bounce back with the picks and a couple other things this week. So hopefully we do.
Well, we'll certainly find out. Obviously, Justin Gianelli, he'll be here in a little while. He's having some internet issues, but we're here also with the co-host of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, who was also on the Upper Deck podcast. That was Mr. Chris Bezea. Chris, happy Friday. How are you, my friend?
Good, Tom. Good, Tom. What's up, guys? Having a good Friday. Enjoying this World Series. Patrick's fighting D-backs already up.
You know, I guess I'll spend a few minutes on this and we'll get into the picks. But, you know, the Arizona Diamondbacks, I guess you could have made a case for Texas. Everybody said Texas and Houston would go 7 games. Obviously TBK is an Orioles fan, so you might want to cover his ears, but the Rangers sweeping Baltimore. But, Texas, we knew, at least in the regular season, they were in first place most of the year. But the Arizona Diamondbacks, I can't figure this out. The Phillies were up 2-0. They go back to Philly up 3-2. Nobody really thought Arizona could win 2 in Philly. They found a way to do that. I just can't explain it. What do you guys think? I'll go with the Brute Force Bradley Weiss first, because obviously you've been a player. You've played in the postseason. You're coaching now. But, how do you explain the Arizona Diamondbacks in this year's World Series? I think one of the most unlikely World Series teams we've seen in a long time here. Maybe since, the 2006 Cardinals, maybe?
How do I explain it? I don't really know how do I explain it. And I just want to start, because you talked about a lot of the miserable things that are happening, the Liberty and other things that happened recently. How about the fact that the New York Mets went 8-0 against the Diamondbacks this season? And the fact that they were one of the teams that could
beat them the last month of the season. Yep, at home.
Yeah, we didn't lose to them this year, and they're in the World Series representing the National League. They're the team that scratched and clawed for that last wild card spot that we couldn't do because we were so bad to the point we didn't even have a chance. But it's just one of those things where we talked about it a few weeks ago, Tom, that. And if you get in the chase, anybody could get hot at any time. Okay. And at some point, the Diamondbacks have just gotten hot. They've played good baseball. And, one thing that people say is pitching wins championships. And when you look at the Diamondbacks, you see their pitching, their starting pitching has done the job. I think it's been the bullpen that's impressed me the most.
They've had a great bullpen.
Their bullpen, they bring in guys whose names I still don't know. Okay. But they listen, they come out and they execute. They go out there, they pitch good innings. They have handled adversity well. They've had some tough adversity in this.
How about in Game 7? The Phillies take the lead up 2-1. Phillies had spots in that game to be able to get back into it. And their bullpen shut them down with that Phillies lineup.
Absolutely. So, I give a lot of credit to the Diamondbacks because, again, they're playing good baseball. It just pains me, Tom, to know that, our garbage team actually beat them this year. And
but you would have been crying if the Phillies were in the World Series. Listen, you got to.
Well, hold on. You want to bring them up? You want to bring them up? Because, I was
saying, if the Phillies were in the World
Series.
I
was going to stay off. But now that you brought them up, thank you, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I'm not going to do what I normally do and just, bash them completely. But Bryce Harper, you left Washington for Philadelphia, and the next year Washington wins the World Series. Then you have had multiple chances to get the job done. You were in the World Series last year. You didn't get it done. Okay, you get to the National League Championship against the Diamondbacks that everyone expects you to beat. Okay, and what did he do? He didn't do anything. He was horrible. Harper and Castellanos, who people were talking like he was the next Babe Ruth this season at one point, and now he couldn't do anything in this series. He was horrible. You go down the list, Trey Turner, another guy who's been proven not good. So the big bad Phillies bats, that we were talking about again. Like I said before, give credit to the Diamondbacks; they deserve the credit. Okay, but at the same time, I can't go off and say that, I can't talk about how Bryce Harper hasn't gotten the job done. And he is a great player. And I am going to give him more respect than I have in the past. But until he gets that World Series, Tom Bryce, people are going to be talking like other, stars that we've talked about that just haven't gotten a championship, like a Charles Barkley in the NBA or
Patrick Ewing with the Knicks.
Yeah, like, he's going to be in that category of players. He was a great player and he might be a Hall of Famer, but he never won a World Series. So right now, Harper, year after year, he's got to get the job done. He's had his chances.
Connor McDavid. Yeah, I know. I got that. John Tavares we had with the Islanders. So players that have had, a lot of success. And I'll get to a bunch of comments from Ron in a second. But Chris, Patrick certainly called it. We had fun with it on Twitter. Where I certainly posted the clip and reposted it a couple of times with the Arizona Diamondbacks. But this was a team, if you think about it, guys, they got swept the last weekend of the series by the Houston Astros. They basically backed into the playoffs. They lost out and still made the playoffs. It was a team in the second half that struggled. They struggled, especially in the last couple of weeks of the season, as Brad spoke about, the Mets handled them when they came into Citi Field, maybe the last, 10 days of the season, something like that. And the team had no momentum, but yet here in the postseason, they handled the Brewers, who were playing very well going into the playoffs. Dodgers, I know Brad made some points about the Dodgers, Justin, when he was on here, but the Dodgers were still, by all intents and purposes, one of the favorites. And the Phillies handled them the first 2 games and were in the driver's seat. And even some of those games, the Diamondbacks clawed their way to come back to win, especially Game 4. And here they are. And people look at it, it was a team that really won it with the combination of rookies and journeymen and, with a manager that, a lot of people really don't really know much about it. And I mean, how do you explain it, Chris?
You know what? Basically, you could explain it just like in every other sport. Once you get into the playoffs, get rid of the records of the teams, get rid of the stats of the players. All that means nothing once the playoffs start. They truly do. They mean nothing. The only thing
I agree with that. I mean,
the only thing that matters is setting up, home field advantage and stuff like that.
The Orioles went over 100 games and they never had the momentum in that series.
I liked the Orioles. I thought the Orioles were going to be in the World Series.
Yeah, you and Patrick spoke about that on the show.
But obviously, I'm wrong, and he's right because he picked the D-backs all the way from before the season started. So, but that's how I look at the playoffs. You just got to get in. Once you're in, all bets are off. The stats are out the door. The team records. I don't care what you did during the regular season. If you get into the playoffs, you're on level playing field with everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, Brad, we had on obviously Coach McClain. We think about Brooklyn College a couple of years ago that won the CUNY. This was a team that they had no momentum going into the little CUNY that we covered, and they wound up going to the NCAA tournament. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it is. I mean, you make the playoffs, it just everybody starts at zero. We've seen it in the NFL. Look, the Giants won the 2 Super Bowls, and those Giants teams, squeaked into the playoffs. I mean, look at the Bengals, right? 2 years ago, Bengals made the Super Bowl. The Bengals made the playoffs? The last weekend of the season? I mean, they were a wild card. I mean, we've seen it. Look, the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. I mean, they were a good wild card, but they still were a wild card only. I mean, so I guess in sports, it doesn't really matter, I guess, anymore. Having the best record, it means zero.
The best teams don't automatically, they're not automatically the World Series champs or the Super Bowl or NBA Finals. They're not always.
No. And the NHL, listen, the NHL, we see it all the time. I mean, the NHL,
all it takes in the NHL, all it takes is one team with a hot goalie.
That's
and
it.
They can ride him all the way to the finals.
Listen, the Kings. Listen, remember the Kings won a Stanley Cup. They made the playoffs like that last Saturday of the season. And they won a Stanley Cup, and they were down, I think, 3-0 in one of those. I think it was against the Sharks, and they came back, won the Stanley Cup. I mean, our Islanders were in the conference finals, and the COVID year technically made the playoffs on percentage points. And the next year, we made it with also, as one of these goofy wild cards. Edmonton in 2006 goes to the Stanley Cup, a 7th game is a wild card.
It happens every year in every single sport. That one team comes out of nowhere, barely makes the playoffs, or nobody's really talking about them, then boom, they're in the finals.
I guess you know what it is, before I get to TBK, I guess what it is, guys, is this Diamondbacks team, they really made the playoffs basically they're the quintessential back into the playoffs. They had no momentum. They got swept at home. They were in first place, but a losing record in the second half. Sure, they had Corbin Carroll, Marte. They had some offense, but it was like they got shut down pretty much in the second half and won 84 games. I mean, you even think about recent teams that have won the World Series. Like Brad brought up the Nationals. Nationals were hot going into the playoffs. We talked about the Dodgers, the Braves in the past. Even the Giants teams that won the 3 World Series. They were the veteran teams. Had the success. And, Ron also wants to say, let's go Packers. We're going to talk about that in a second. Let's go Ravens. That's going to be for you, Mr. Baltimore kid. Mm-hmm. Philly shouldn't have lost those games. We were at home. I mean, you have any thoughts on any of this at all, TBK, before I bring Justin in here real quick?
I'm not going to pretend to care about what's going on right now because of the heartbreak that I suffered with the Orioles. But, I don't know, call it a cop-out, call it whatever, but pretty much like Chris said, all of that stuff, whether they were hot, whether they weren't, that doesn't matter, right? Because they are where they are now. So
doesn't matter. Yeah,
it's the old adage, winners find a way to win.
That's it. And we're here joined by Mr. Justin Gianelli, host of the Baseball Banter Show. Also heard him on Randy Dillon's Hockey Fan Chat. Justin, good to be with you. And, we're talking about really, I guess it's more about the Arizona Diamondbacks in a sense than the Texas Rangers. Because, the Rangers obviously still had some firepower this year, though they struggled at the end of the season. But, they were in first place for most of the year. And they still were, a team that I think a lot of people thought could certainly be in this spot, with all the things that break. But this Diamondbacks team, again, they got swept the last weekend of the season at home. They make the playoffs despite losing out. They were a team that certainly struggled. We spoke a lot about them early in the year, but, they find a way and they win 2 games in Philly. A lot of people didn't think that even. And here they are right now up over Texas 5-3 in the 8th inning. And, how do you explain a team like the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, good to be back. Got my technical difficulties issues over with. Looking at this Diamondbacks team, they really had one of those topsy-turvy seasons. Yep. They spent a lot of the first half of the season in first place in the National League West, and then it came around to the first week of July or so, and the Dodgers blew by them and ended up beating them by 16 games, right? And like you said, they got swept the last weekend of the season. You kind of felt like they backed into the postseason. Their September was poor. Their second half was just such a roller coaster. I mean, I remember, I think it was mid-September. I think it was like mid-September. They came to Citi Field and the Mets swept them, I think, 4 games.
We were talking about that with Brad. We were speaking about maybe like 2 weeks before the season. They got swept at Citi Field. Yep.
Yeah, right around the 12th or 13th of September, the Mets ended up sweeping the Diamondbacks. It didn't – and watching that series back in September, it didn't give the impression of a team that would go on a run to the World Series. But, I mean, like I mentioned in my baseball banter, just like the Rangers, the Diamondbacks kind of bludgeoned their way and kind of just breezed their way into the NLCS. I mean, you think about what they did to Milwaukee,
the sweeps, yeah,
and then against the Dodgers, they scored early, they scored often, they basically ambushed the Dodgers every night. And listen,
the Dodgers were never in that. Those
and we talked multiple times about the pitching issues of the LA Dodgers, but I still could have never imagined what happened to them happen. They give up 9 runs in the first couple innings of game 1. Bobby Miller struggles in the first inning of game 2. Lance Lynn gets knocked out in the third inning of game 3. And the Dodgers really never gave themselves a chance in that division series. And then going into Philadelphia, I did not think there was a chance that they win both games 6 and 7. When it came down to game 5, right? Obviously, they lose the first 2 games in Philadelphia. And I'm saying, all right, for the D-backs to have a chance, they got to win all 3 at home. They get the first 2. They win games 3 and 4.
Come back in game 4.
But then Philadelphia comes back and wins game 5 behind Zach Wheeler. And, give them credit. Game 6 and 7, they would scratch, they would claw. They got some big home runs off Aaron Nola in game 6. And they were clutch late in game 7. And, you give them all the credit in the world. And so a team like this, a team with 84 wins.
Yeah, and we're talking about this. I mean, maybe the
World
most
Series.
Yeah, maybe the most unlikely World Series since what, the Cardinals 06 maybe?
Yeah, I mean the Cardinals had 83 wins that year. I mean, you look at the Rangers real quick. The Rangers, they were in first place most of the year, but they had themselves a topsy-turvy season too. There was a lot of times that this team really struggled, and you almost wondered if the Rangers were going to miss the playoffs altogether.
Yeah,
right?
they had a stretching
They're in that bunch of teams like the Mariners, the Rangers, the Astros,
Blue Jays,
the Blue Jays, and it was the Mariners that ended up missing. And real quick, the last thing I'll say before we move on, I saw this stat and it's funny. This would be the 3rd straight year that there's a team in the World Series that the Mariners had more wins than.
Yeah, the Mariners missed it in 21 the last day,
and they won 90 games, and the Braves that year only won 88 games.
Right.
I mean, think about the Braves for a minute. Back-to-back 100-win seasons, can't sniff the World Series, win 88 games, lose Ronald Acuna, win the World Series. Go figure.
Yeah,
Gotta
you know,
get it
look,
done when
Chris
it counts, and they're
well,
not.
that
They're
was
not
what
getting
Chris
it done.
was saying. Listen, I mean, you know, the Braves and Dodgers win all these games. The Orioles, TBK's team, and we'll bring in Rob Maraska for a second. I'm going to do a few minutes on baseball. I know Rob's, you know, going to run here and talk about a couple things for a few minutes here, but I got a funny dig at Brad, which is always great when somebody throws a
here
dig
we
at Brad. Serious question, Brad. You're bashing the Phillies, but when was the last time the Mets won a World Series? We have 3.
So listen, well, first of all, let me make this clear. All right, bashing the
Wow.
Phillies. I was the only one on this panel to actually joke, but say the Phillies were going to win the division, even though they didn't win the division. But at the same time, they actually got the furthest of any team in the NL East. So I guess I kind of had something right there. Okay, listen, I'm not going to bash the Phillies, all right, but I am going to say to that response right there, okay, that they've been in the World Series and now they've been to the NL. I mean, Bryce Harper needs to get the job done. Like, there's no, listen, I know as a Mets fan, like, we need to do something. Okay, I get it. Okay, but at the same time, you guys are there, right? The amount of chances and the amount of years that you're going to have chances to get there, okay, are going to dwindle. Like, get the job done already. You've had your chances.
Well, baseball, because it's a 162 game season, it's very
And he's
tough.
wrong. The
Yeah.
Phillies only have 2 world championships.
They have 1980 and 2008, right?
80 and 08.
Yeah, 80.
So he's getting ahead of himself.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but we're here. Well, let's bring Rob Maraska. And Rob, I know obviously you're here for a few minutes, and we're going to move on to football very shortly, but obviously wanted to get your perspective. Obviously, also, I'm going to make the announcement here for the regular Sports Report guys. We're actually preempted. So I think TBK, we spoke about earlier on the show, he'll join us for the wrestling part of the show, but we're preempted the second half of the show because we have on XCW New Age champion Eric Mason in a special to the show, but everybody else will be back for the remainder of the season. But this is a very special thing that we kind of have to do on Sportswire. But we'll be back the following with the rest of the guys, except TBK. He gets to be special and be here for a little bit to preview that. But for you, Rob Maraska, obviously it's been a while, I know, but give me your impressions here in the World Series. I know you've been listening here, and this Arizona Diamondbacks team, 84 games, one of the more unlikely World Series teams in recent memory. They sweep the Brewers. That was a team that a lot of people thought could be a dark horse. They took care of the Dodgers. Dodgers are always a favorite of everybody. And then the Phillies, they come back in after being down 0-2 and 3-2, having to win twice in Philly, and they're up now in Texas. I mean, how do you explain the Arizona Diamondbacks?
And they snuck in at the last minute too. Let's
yeah, we spoke about that. They got swept the last week series and still made the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm glad that they beat the Phillies. Did a Phillies fan just say that the Phillies won 3 World Series?
Yes, that would be. I'm going to put that up here. That would be Ron, and Ron obviously been on TBK's podcast, so that's a show we've played on here. But yeah, he's saying the Phillies have 3, but the Phillies I think won in 1980, right? In 2008, which obviously most of us on the panel remember 2008 very well, but 1980.
I remember, of course, yeah. I remember 1980. Tug McGraw closed that out for the Phillies. So, ex-Met. But, hey, listen, the Diamondbacks last year, I do this every year. I make a bet on the worst team to win the World Series. Okay? So last year I had a bet on FanDuel for Arizona to win. And
wow, you might be getting rich, right? Maybe
no. That was last season.
Okay.
This season I picked Oakland. I should have.
Well, Rob, you're really. I know we have Patrick on here that does like the crazy picks over the years.
I do that. Just I always bet
that one.
Oakland. I mean, wow. I mean, Oakland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, look what if I would have picked Arizona this year instead of last year, I would have been in good shape. But anyway, listen, they're playing exciting baseball in the postseason right now. They're playing, the kind of baseball, scrappy baseball. That's how they're winning. They're manufacturing runs.
Yeah,
and
they get off the early starts. We were speaking about that. They get off to early starts in these series. It's been kind of their key throughout, whether it was Milwaukee coming from behind, the Dodgers getting those early runs, even the Phillies, the games they won, and, especially in Game 6 in Philadelphia, got the early lead. Game 7 even up 1-0, and they get up early.
Yeah, what happened to the Phillies with that? The home crowd, the best
That's what
home
Brad was
crowd
saying. Big bad Brad Weiss.
Yeah. You know what? The crowd was loud. Yes, it definitely was loud. But what happened to the Phillies? And also an ex-Met who is on the Phillies was kind of pissed off because he didn't get to pitch. I'm talking about Walker, of course.
Yep.
He didn't have a great season. He had a good June, but he did have a winning record. They didn't even use him, and that he's not happy about that. So the Phillies, I don't know what happened with the Phillies. I just think it's the manager, not enough experience. Last year, he might have got a little lucky. He got them there. Yes, he got them there again this year. But the Phillies, to me, just collapsed in that
Well,
series.
you know what? Look, I mean, listening to the post game from the national telecast, which TBS covered the games, and the guys they were like, "Listen, the Phillies they have the same core back. They'll probably spend and retool, and I think there's still a lot to be certainly excited for." And very quickly before we move on to football, and I thought the other fascinating series or note was that the Houston Astros lost every game at home in this series, and we also see that Dusty Baker is going to call it quits or has certainly announced his intentions to retire. And, what do you guys make of the Houston Astros then going forward? Is that where do they go from here in that sense, real quick?
You know,
Good.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Who wants to take that?
Okay. So that's another thing I briefly touched on. So
Yep.
anybody listening to our show can catch the baseball banter as well. I did
Link
talk,
right below. Yep.
Yep, I did talk about the whole Astros situation. I think they'll be fine. I think that they'll be in line. That's gonna be a hot job. It's gonna be. A team that's consistently good every year. That's gonna be such a hot commodity. They're good. Their roster should be in good shape. It'll be interesting to see where their pitching is. Obviously, they got Verlander coming back next year. I hope Valdez is a little bit better because Valdez definitely had his struggles in this year's postseason. Little more uncommon because he and Christian Javier the last couple of years have been absolutely clutch in the postseason, and they just kind of didn't get those performances this year, and it was just puzzling. I think if I'm not mistaken, including the playoffs, if you add September and the postseason, I think the Astros finished 7-18 at Minute Maid Park.
They had a losing record at home the entire year, which is very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean they for whatever reason they struggled with the Rangers at Minute Maid Park, and for them, all they had to do was win one game because they dominated, and I think they ended up going like 10-1 or 11-1 at Globe Life Field. They just dominated the Rangers on the road, and all they had to do was win one home game, and they couldn't pull it off. And they'll have to go back to the drawing board, and I think it really starts. I think it really starts with their rotation next year. If they can get some help in that rotation, I think they'll be right back in it as always.
All right, let me get to Rob Marassa because Rob is going to bounce off here real quick, and we'll go on to the NFL. And Rob, I know obviously you're going to move on here, but very quickly, the Houston Astros again, lose all 4 games at home in this series. Dusty Baker is obviously moving on eventually to next destination, Cooperstown, but they are going to change managers, and it is a team. I think that Patrick and Chris were also talking about it. Probably still stays the same, but it's an interesting 7 years because you've only got you got 2, but you got 2 in 7 years. I don't really know if you quantify it as a dynasty, but you got 2 World Series, so it's not. You're not going to complain, but what was your impressions on how this Astros team kind of bounced out here? Then we'll let you get to closing thoughts and move on.
Yeah, I would have. I wanted to see the Astros win over the Rangers. I didn't want. I'm being selfish. I didn't want Scherzer or DeGrom to get a ring for some reason, especially since they really didn't do much. I mean, Scherzer, let's face it, that last game, he pitched okay, but, he was going crazy in the clubhouse like, he was the king of the game. So Houston, they're going to, they have to have a manager, I think, Dusty Baker's old school. I think that they're going to go, younger. I think all these old guys are eventually just going to be phased out.
Well, they're old. That's the point. I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder even with I wonder with Bochy. Listen, if Bochy wins this year, what does Bochy come back? Does he just go out on top? I mean, I think that's a fair point as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's good to go out on top, but it's also good to make that money as long as.
Well, I don't know if these guys need it. I think you make a fair point that in sports we see it all the time. Look, we were talking at the beginning of the show, right, with TBK with Ric Flair. Ric Flair, everybody knows Ric Flair. He's 74, and like they're talking about him wrestling. And they're like, wait a minute, Ric Flair's 74. So in sports, it is crazy that we're actually talking about Ric Flair potentially wrestling again in a match.
Yeah.
I mean, but the point is not so much about Ric Flair, but in sports. It's very hard for people to kind of, when do I call it? When do I go on top? Michael Jordan had the perfect one in 1998, but he came back. John Elway is probably one of those that got it right. He won the 2 Super Bowls back to back, and he was done. Brady in 2020, we thought, okay, you know what? That's the perfect way to go. Now, he had 2 good years, I would say, but, he didn't go out on top and winning. But, guys, really, it's very hard in sports to go out on top. What's that?
Peyton Manning,
but you felt like his play was like
he definitely declined that season. That was definitely the Denver defense.
Yeah, 100%.
That won that Super Bowl.
But the point is, when do you figure out, when to call it and call it quits? I think it's a fair question there, Rob. But obviously, we'll see with the Astros team. But obviously, I know obviously you're here in a spot, so I wanted to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts before we move on. And anything else that you want to plug, share, or say. Obviously, we hope to see you in 2 weeks from now. Definitely. And we'll recap obviously the World Series, get everybody ready for the off season. We'll be much more into the NFL. So I turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, quick note about the Mets manager. I personally think that Craig Counsell is going to be the next Mets manager. That's just my personal feeling. I don't know what the other guys think, but the Mets say they're going to interview. It's definitely going to be someone outside the organization. But I don't know. I think he's going to be on top of the list. He even said, he would go to New York. With all his ties in Milwaukee, his family. He's a Milwaukee guy.
Right there,
yeah. Right. Yeah, he'll be back with Stearns, and I think he probably will manage the Mets next year. I want to ask you a real quick question before I go. You were talking about Ric Flair. How old was Iron Sheik the last time he wrestled?
If I'm not mistaken, the Iron Sheik, now again, don't quote me on this because I'm just going off the top of my head, might have been, I want to say 70 maybe, 70, 71. There's a guy right now currently.
That's about right.
Yeah, there's a guy currently, TBK might know him. He was in Impact Wrestling, and he wrestled Trey Miguel earlier in the year, and he's like 71. He's doing like independence. The guy is like sick. He does like stuff off the top rope. I think his name is Mike Sanders, if I'm not mistaken. He's like 70. So that would be to answer your question. I think the Iron Sheik might have been like 70 when he wrestled the last time. Why? You have the answer?
No, I was just wondering.
I was going to say, trivia question what it is. I mean, I think he was about 70 the last time.
Yeah, because you mentioned Ric Flair, so I was thinking about Iron
Sheik.
Sheik.
Ric Flair, who wrestled last year and really was done 15 years ago, but he came back because he basically admitted he's been divorced so many times and needed the money. He needs the money, and obviously he was wrestling last year, and there's talk that he may wrestle again now. So that's kind of why his name came up, and TBK chuckled. But yeah, the Iron Sheik was, he did hang on, a little too longer than he should have. But that's again a financial reason. But there's a guy right now who's out there who's about 70 years old. I think his name's Mike Sanders. I could be wrong. I could be mixing his name up, but he actually is still out there. But that's we'll have to see. But appreciate the trivia, and also, where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, R. Maraska on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, and Rob Maraska on Facebook, and John Gonzalez out there, if you're out there or not. I'm still in first place.
Well, you know what? I mean, obviously, for some guys,
Rob, that's right.
Well, you know what, Brad? You're way behind, though. I mean, so obviously,
Brad
I
is
don't
rooting
care.
for you, Rob. Don't worry.
Listen, let's we got to go
Brad,
back.
you like wake
Hold
up at
on,
like
we got to go
Brad,
back
you
to
wake up at like 3:00 in the morning and think about like I'm so behind in picks. You are like a master
I do
competitor.
not do that.
Yes, you
Listen,
do. Brad,
can
you
we
are
get
a
back to
master
the
competitor.
can we get back to the overall mission statement of the season? The mission statement of the season was don't let John Gonzalez win. That was it. Okay,
He's alive.
I'm rooting on anyone else.
But
Okay,
he's
I'm
still
happy
alive,
for him.
though. He's still mathematically alive. He's still mathematically. But there
I'm
has to
trying
be.
my best.
What I will say, Brad, real quick, there has to be a change because guys are missing and forgetting to do their picks. So you have to change that next year.
Retrospect next year, we will change that.
You got to change
Yeah.
that because TBK missed this week. Patrick is missed 3 weeks in a row now. I mean, he's
Yeah.
out. You know, poor Justin missed 1 week, and it's like, you know, he's out because of the 1 week. So, you know, guys, you got to change that to at least do it Friday. You know, at least you do Friday. Give one more day. You know, look, there's some guys. Listen, you know, I don't know what's in
Right
Patrick's
before the
mind.
game starts, you could get your picks in.
I would say at least
we're gonna change it to that next.
I would say at least when we go off the air, like midnight. I at least say midnight Friday. You give a day, it's a day and a half longer. You got at least one more day. I don't know if it's Sunday kickoff, but at least Friday when we're off the air, like midnight or 1:00. That's at least, you know.
The only reason why it's good that we lock him in before Friday is
It's a
because
Thursday
we do
game.
this
Thursday
and we
game.
make our picks on Friday. So
Yeah, no, and people do come back and watch these shows. I mean, obviously, you know, we have a lot of new subscribers on YouTube.
I was gonna say at the same time, Chris, Tom tries to give me these persuasive, speeches to get me to change my picks. So
and it's working because
I
you're
know.
behind in the standings. You're
No,
not
but
at the top. You're not at the top. It's working. You're not at the top right now. So some may
Right, but
say
see,
that
but a
that's
guy like-
distracting you.
if we could put our picks in, say on Sunday, Rob can wait to see the show and hear all the picks and say, "Oh, okay, I could just play defense now because I'm up by 5-6 picks." Right?
So then maybe the good common medium would be right before the show. They have to lock in on Friday.
I think it should be at least one more day, whether it's when we're
The only reason why Friday at least would be better is we get the full injury reports on Friday.
Yeah,
That's
but I
true,
don't
yeah.
think it's. But I don't think guys are. I don't think
And
guys
the
are.
pick,
off
the,
that, but I will say this though, Patrick, you missed 3 weeks in a row. What's your reason?
I don't know.
You know what?
What's your reason?
get
You were
mine
on
in
this show
Wednesday.
before. Like I'm not knocking Patrick, but like you missed
Yeah.
3 weeks in a row. Like okay, 1, 2, okay, but 3, like you were like right in the middle of the standings. Did you like just say, "Hey, I'm giving up. I can't win"? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm not.
He probably missed the first week and then said, I lost. I may as well. Then he just probably, he's probably done now. I don't know.
You know, hey, it's his prerogative. He can
Yeah.
do whatever he wants. You know, but
Hey,
I
it's
try
just
to
the
get
best.
mine done Wednesday. I go over everything. I sit down.
well, you don't want to tell us how you're in the lead because guys like Brad are going to take notes and go, "So that's how he does it." You know, I would say,
that's right. I'm taking notes on Rob Maraska.
You
I
take
know, right?
you
He's
take
calling
good
him on
scouting.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, listen, maybe I'm just different, but I like to see the full injury report before I know how I'm.
Yeah, but guys, I don't think
do make a
Patrick. I
difference
don't
in a
think
game.
TBK. Yeah, I got you, but I don't think Patrick and TBK's thing is the injury report. They just
No,
either
of
they
course
couldn't they couldn't do it, and that's it. But
No.
Rob, I know you got to run, so I definitely want to talk with you next week or 2 weeks from now.
in 2 weeks.
Preempted. And thank you, my friend, and we'll see you soon. All right, that was Rob Maraska here. We are on Sportswire Radio having fun. We'll get to our NFL picks shortly, but we're here hanging out with some of the guys who actually host shows on Sportswire Radio. By the way, you can listen to them on the link below here. Well, for now, it's a temporary link. In a few weeks, we will have a brand new website because I'll have some time to be able to sit down with that. Right now, I'm in a little bit of a pinch, but in about 10 or so days from now, I'll have a lot more time to be able to dedicate some things to put that in there for Sportswire. We also have our blog, Brad, that'll be reactivated, our Sports Report blog for a couple different things. So we're going to tie that to our new website. Stay tuned in about 2 or so weeks, maybe a little more than that, but definitely in the next couple weeks, we'll have a brand new website up. And you can also watch some of our previous shows. You want to poke fun at us, you want to see how we did in our picks, you can do that all here at Sportswire Radio. We have a lot of new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. And we're here with a couple of guys, including the brute force Bradley Weiss, who's 27th all-time in SJLI men's basketball history and rebounds. We're getting ready for the season, Brad. We are less than 2 weeks away. We got a lot of games, a lot of coverage for it. We'll do some things for that as we get a little bit closer. And Brad is also the head coach for our Plainview boys JFK boys basketball team, also an assistant on the varsity team. He's the head coach of the JV team. He's also involved with the Long Island Nets, the Level Up Basketball Organization. Also here with multiple shows here with us, that is Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, who's certainly wearing the mascot of the legendary band, which should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, called Iron Maiden, which I do not know why Iron Maiden is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My buddy Josh Bailey, one of our listeners, was talking to me yesterday about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and how it is a joke that certain bands are not in there. And Iron Maiden is definitely, to me, at the top of the list as those bands that should be in there. But Chris does a great job for us alongside Mr. Patrick Trotty, Sharman Phillip, and Justin Gianelli. You heard here with Randy Dillon and the Hockey Fan Chat. He also does some stuff here with the baseball banter. He gives his banter. We played some clips here of it. We played it in the rotation the next few days. And also the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. He's now getting ready to maybe get some money from Spotify, right, and some other sources. He's basically now got the ability to qualify for that and help him out. Go let him make some money so he can keep doing the podcasting. He's also got multiple shows of the Be More Talkative here podcast on our link below. And you'll hear more of him with the IMF Boys, the foundation. I think Monday, right? Probably Monday we'll have that up and running. So it's Mr. TBK, the Baltimore Kid. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station, and your voice of all wrestling here. We're having a great time. All right, so, let's get to the picks. We'll pick some of these games. We'll try to run through as many of them as we can. But to recap right now, we'll actually tell you where we are in our standings between everybody here on Sportswire Radio. So at the top of the list, the man that just left us, Robert Maraska. He is up 61-45. He is up over some guy on Sportswire Radio who's 2 games back. Don't know anything about him, but hopefully that guy goes and finishes in last place. We've got, I believe, Chris Pizzea right there. Chris is 6 games back, very much alive here, keeping up the pace here. Billy McInerney just above the 500 mark. So he's just above water there. 7 games back. Billy is right there. And the brute force Bradley Weiss, the man who can't get over 500, who's been struggling here, trying to get over that 500 line. He's 52-54. The definition of mediocrity. The brute force Bradley Weiss, 52-54, but he's still alive. He's 9 games back, and we've got
That's right.
Yes, that's what you are. We've got TBK at 46-60. Unfortunately, though, I know you didn't get a chance to pick your games this week, so that's kind of unfortunate. Also, we've got here 48-58, John Gonzalez, who's still alive, 13 games back. Now, for our baseball fans, there have been stories of teams that have come back 13 games or more back. We saw the 95 Mariners refused to lose. The 78 Yankees came back. I think the 64 Cardinals came back. So there have been stories of teams that have been behind 13 games.
Question real quick.
Yes,
what happens if John Gonzalez doesn't win, right? He doesn't win the championship, finishes in 4th, but Brad finishes below him.
Oh.
Well, Brad's going to probably have a meltdown on the air. I think Brad.
Don't say that. That can't happen.
Brad can't happen. So,
what I'd like to say though is that I like to take that in a different direction, Chris, because you see you're thinking the other way. I want to think the other way. I want to see TBK or Justin or somebody who hasn't made picks for a certain amount of weeks get ahead of John Gonzalez. And that'll make me really happy, because then I can go really hard on him. That he had a pick every week and he lost to people who lost games automatically. That would be great.
Now, we'll pick some of the games in a second, but we've had 7 weeks going on 8. So if you do the math, John's averaged about 7 wins a week. So you've had 52. So you're averaging 7.5. And then you look at Rob, he's at 61. So he's averaged about a little over a game or 2 above 500 a week. So realistically, if you're Justin, who's been playing every week, or even a TBK who comes back maybe after next week, you're going to have to probably go at least 9 or 10 per week these last 10 weeks if you go based on those numbers.
To even have a shot.
Yep.
To even have a shot, but also certainly
just get past John Gonzalez. Just get past him.
Right. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yes, there's always a chance.
No, I mean, look, Justin's 22 back, but you do the math. If you win 3 ahead of Rob each week, or 2.5, you could theoretically still win this. I mean, you got a chance. I mean, that's why I can't bury John, Brad, because 13 back, I just gave you stories in sports. Teams that were 13 games back and won. So John's still not out of it here. And Ron is excited because he just came back in time. So obviously, we've kind of recapped where we are in the standings. And again, Patrick Trotty, 41-65, though, hasn't picked for 3 straight weeks. And we have a couple of other guys here. I guess Carlos Otoro Chavez picked the first week and then never came back. And Joey Bostrom, who's never picked altogether. So I don't know why we still even have those 2 guys. Should just be like,
you know what my real problem was? Not just missing week 3. I also went 2-14 in week 2.
Well, guys have had bad weeks. You know what it
An
is?
absolute horrendous week 2.
And speaking of people that are here, John Gonzalez is here.
Oh, here he is.
You just missed us talking about you, John. You got to rewind the tape.
We're gonna certainly be talking about him a lot here. So I'm going right to the brute force, Brad Weiss here. So let's go with some different games. I'm going to try to pick some of the more memorable ones here of the week. So Brad, let's go with one of your favorite teams right off the bat here. Those Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. Certainly the Cowboys here at home, 6.5-point favorites over the Rams. Cowboys, obviously in this spot, a lot of people feel probably good about it because of the 6.5-point spread. But the brute force, Bradley Weiss, I don't even have to try to convince you here. You're not even giving me a chance. Tell me why, at the very least, you're picking the Los Angeles Rams. But I feel like there's a catch about who wins the game. So for those that are listening and watching, talk to me.
Smart man. So you're right. There is a catch. So listen, let me start by saying I am so sick and tired of these backdoor covers. Yet again on Thursday night, I took Buffalo. All right, I took Buffalo with the damn back, and they had multiple chances to kick a field goal. No, all right, again, no, all right. And all they needed was one of them. Okay, and ultimately they let up that damn touchdown. Okay, and they messed us all up who picked Buffalo. So this is where I go right into this game because I think that Dallas is going to win. But I have a fishy feeling here that there's going to be that late drive by the Rams when they're down by 2 touchdowns, and they're going to score an unnecessary touchdown to cover the spread. So I'm going to take the Rams losing the game there, but they're going to cover the spread late. They're going to score that touchdown. They're going to do the backdoor cover. And again, I just can't stand them anymore. It feels like there's so many.
Yeah, been a lot of them this year. Okay, so I could certainly see some of that here, and I'll get to some of the guys' comments here shortly. But, TBK, it's interesting because the Rams have been in this spot. They've actually won some of these games. So Dallas has played very well. I guess you get a free shot. You can say whatever you want because you actually didn't pick. So what do you think?
I mean, obviously, coming into Dallas is no easy feat for any team. I do agree with I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think Dallas is going to blow them out by any means. But with home field advantage, I really think Dallas can get the job done. I see no reason why they wouldn't at this point. They're a very good team. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think it's going to be close enough. But I'm giving it to Dallas.
That's fair. For you, Justin, again, Dallas, I guess you could say they had a strong early start, kind of come back to earth, but certainly, I guess, maybe slightly rebounding. The Rams, 3-4, and it's funny because in the NFC, you're very much alive actually for a wild card, 3-4. I mean, listen, there's even talk on Twitter, well, the Giants are a game and a half back of a wild card. And if they beat the Jets, maybe they can go on a run. So it's kind of funny in the NFC. In the AFC, it's obviously very, very deep in terms of who's over 500, but a win for the Rams says something. But, what do you think here? Because I still say Dallas is at home, and they are 6.5-point favorites.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, for whatever reason, and this takes nothing away from the greatness of Cooper Kupp, but for whatever reason, over the last couple of weeks since Cooper Kupp returned, I feel like their offense has become a little more dysfunctional. Their offense has really struggled at times. I know Pittsburgh's got a pretty solid defense, but I mean they did nothing in the second. The Rams did nothing in the second half of that game last week, and honestly, I don't know that the Rams can keep up with the Cowboys here. Now I get that nice hook number of 6.5, and that's why I'm going to take the Cowboys because I do like a 24-17 kind of game for the Cowboys. But I don't know. I'm starting to be a little concerned about the Rams. That maybe that their good start was a bit of smoke and mirrors. And I think Dallas will bounce back a little bit. I know the early portion of the schedule was some of the weaker teams in the league, or some teams battling injuries. They played some tough teams. They lost some of those games, but they went into the bye week after week 6 with a very nice win over the Chargers.
Yep.
I was very
Monday
impressed
night
by
game,
that.
Yep.
Yeah, very impressed by that. So I'll take the Cowboys in this one.
And before I get to Chris, I want to clarify something for John Gonzalez. It's Chris that's in third. Anthony Finkel never picked for us this season. He actually never picked. Anthony Finkel didn't pick. He comes in here and says, "Hey, what's up?" But he probably, knowing Anthony Finkel, didn't realize to click on a link. So just want to make that clear.
I'm glad he's paying close attention to the standings. That means something, by the way.
No, he didn't know. Maybe he thought that Anthony Finkel would say something like picking for the belt, but Anthony Finkel is like in his own world. Anthony Finkel's
sending in his picks on a napkin, so
he's probably in his own bubble, probably like somewhere on a beach, and he's probably just like that's just Anthony Finkel's like in his own. Anthony Finkel is like in his own world. And I love Anthony Finkel, but he is in his own world. He's not picking. He's not sitting on a link on Yahoo and picking games. And a napkin, yeah, he'll write them on a napkin and probably keep it with him. And before I get to you, Chris, I want to say hello to one of our buddies, and that is Mr. Beans himself. Beans here from the UK. I didn't realize he was in the UK right now. But don't know much about American football. But let's go Ravens. And, yes, we'll definitely get to the Ravens in a little while. But and thank you for tuning in, by the way. But Chris, again, Dallas, I guess there is a point. They haven't been that impressive, but they are 4-2. Certainly in a good enough position. And the Rams have, 3-4, treading water, but very much alive in a middling to weak NFC. And what do you think here as Dallas is 6.5-point favorites at home?
I believe the Cowboys are going to win this game. I can't see them losing to the Rams because the Rams defense is not great. But I also think that the Rams offense can kind of give somebody like myself, hopefully, a backdoor cover here. I think the Cowboys have been in control of this game, but I think the Rams will come back a little bit. They'll be able to score. I don't love the Cowboys. That's why I think the Rams in a backdoor cover type of situation will cover this game. But I think the Cowboys will win.
Yeah, I know. I thought about that, but I still, for me, 1:00 start time, Dallas at home. It's still not December, still not November for Bradbury. We always talk about this every year on the show. Dallas gets weak the last month of the season, but I just kind of think here in this spot, Dallas coming off a bye, I kind of feel like with a little bit of momentum beating a Chargers team, obviously our old friend Anastasia Racina, but I will say that I like the Dallas Cowboys here to cover. But let me get to a couple of comments here from John Gonzalez. Well, I think Chris has got something to say about that, and some other guys do. Billy McInerney's still alive.
The guy from Sportzwire Radio, that guy's probably got something to say about it too.
No, I actually just I got nothing to say about it, but I'll certainly defer to everybody else, and I certainly will actually, as we get closer to the season, actually unveil a belt for this, so people want to win something. Also, yeah, Anthony's not in third. Giants are trash. We'll get to the Giants later on. It's very difficult for me to win. The Brute has my doll and sticking pins in me everywhere. Again, what is this? Major Toronto and Major League? But, John, who did you have here in the matchup? That was what I was curious about. At least he didn't say the Eagles. He chose the right birds. Okay, that's for Beans. Okay, so I guess if Ron and John Gonzalez didn't have anything to say on those picks, I'm going to move on. Although John probably, I know, did pick. I just don't know off the top of my head who he picked. But the Brute Force Spreadwise, let's actually go to a game. Speaking of Ron, let's actually put Ron on the spot because the Green Bay Packers are playing the Minnesota Vikings. And, I guess, Brad, again, in the NFC, in this kind of middling NFC, 2 weeks ago, maybe people would say, you know what, the Vikings, and maybe you trade Kirk Cousins. But now you look at it in that NFC North, 3-4, you're very much alive here for making the playoffs. You've won a couple of games in a row now. You beat the 49ers, and maybe this is a spot where Green Bay is very much come back to earth after a strong start. And I know poor Ron is going to be a little bit upset about this, but Brad Weiss, What do you think here? I mean, this screams like keeping the upset alert on the board here because Uncle Rob's Vikings are starting to feel good again. Kirk Cousins in October, you always feel comfortable with him, and it's a 1-point spread only, the obligatory home team favored. But the Packers seem to be going one way, and just maybe, Brad, Uncle Rob's Vikings are going another.
Yeah, well, let me do what I did a few weeks ago with the Lions when I came on this show and preached the gospel, okay, about how the Lions were going to cover that spread against the Buccaneers, okay, and I said the spread was disrespectful to the Lions, okay? I'm going to go as far to say that this spread is extremely disrespectful to the Vikings, okay? I don't think this is even right, the fact that they are not favored in this game, okay? They should be, because right now they are playing better football, and Green Bay is playing horrible. Like, they're not playing good football. Jordan Love, okay, it has not been great. I mean, the team itself there's been no, per se, bright spot that you want to say. And I think Minnesota, listen, give credit to Kirk Cousins, who we always rip on, can never play in prime time, can never do this, can never do that, right? And he comes on a primetime game, and he played his butt off. He played really well in that game. He found guys. He moved the ball around. I mean, that guy Addison was a stud, but it was more than just him. I mean, everywhere. You look, Minnesota was finding ways to score and make plays. So I give credit to Minnesota. I think they're playing better. And to your point, yeah, Uncle Rob's getting excited, especially after the game we have to talk about last week, which was a complete, utter embarrassment. TBK's Ravens over Sportswire's Lions. All right? Listen.
We'll get to it.
We'll get to that. But you know what? The Lions lost, and I'm not saying they're going to lose the division, but with that being said, if you're Minnesota, like you're playing a divisional rival and you're sniffing 500, you want this game bad, and you are playing much better than this team. To me, there's no doubt that Minnesota should be favored, number one, and number two, the spread should be higher in Minnesota's favor. Give me Minnesota, and this is pretty easy for me.
Yeah, Minnesota's got a couple wins in a row, and now they're right back in the picture. But, TBK, again, another free shot for you this week. And, it's tough because this is this is the obligatory home team favored by 1 point. But they're really, to me, two teams going the other way. So, a quick synopsis on what do you think here in this matchup?
So, I mean, for a team that, we were saying a couple of weeks ago had needed must-win games and stuff like that, to come off of a decent win against what everybody was calling the most impressive team in the NFL. I mean, that could have given a huge boost to your entire season right there. You go ahead and you beat a San Francisco team that is absolutely, just was running roughshod over the NFC, and to come away with a win like that against, a team like that, you got to figure that the momentum, and I'm sorry, Frankie. I know you've had my back here, but the Packers have not been impressive. So, with all the momentum behind them, I gotta go with the Vikings.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going to feel that way, Justin. Again, it's interesting because a couple weeks ago, people were ready to write the Vikings off, and the Vikings were going to be one of the bigger disappointments in the league. But you get a big win over the 49ers. And you're in an NFC playoff mix where there's just a lot of teams are kind of in a gluttony of each other. And, if things work out, the Vikings very much could be, at least very much close to where they were, last year. And, what do you think here is Green Bay is just the obligatory 1 point favorite at home, 1 o'clock. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Justin.
You're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, I'm trying to take myself off of mute. Listen, the spread doesn't mean much to me. Honestly, the way Minnesota's playing is enough confidence for me to feel like Minnesota's the better team in this situation. And a couple things of note, I think that's really going to hurt the Packers is the potential status of Jair Alexander, Preston Smith. And if those two guys aren't there, they got problems. I mean, we saw Jordan Addison basically have his rookie breakout game last week against the 49ers. Kirk Cousins threw for 378 and a couple of touchdowns. The Vikings offense is rounding into shape. I mean, even without Justin Jefferson. And, they have – and the Vikings are relatively healthy. Now it'll be interesting to see if they get Ezra Cleveland back. That'll help the offensive line a little bit more, But other than Jefferson, they got their full complement of players. T.J. Hawkins is a big target as well. He and Addison have really stepped up in the absence of Jefferson, and the way Kirk Cousins is playing, I would not be at all surprised if Minnesota takes it on a run as far enough to say that they're a playoff team. I mean, Minnesota's got a good roster, and their defense under Brian Flores has gotten significantly better than what we saw from Ed Donato last year. The 32nd ranked defense in the entire National Football League. They've made marked improvements, and they're the better team. And they're going to win this football game. I would say comfortably by at least 10.
I think you're absolutely right that there is a very, very strong path for them to get back into the postseason. Chris, again, the Vikings have won a couple in a row. You're starting to feel good about this team. It's a team that won 13 games last year anyway. So, if there's any team that could win a bunch of games here, it is the Minnesota Vikings. And I would kind of think for a lot of people, this is a ripe for the picking for them to kind of get back to 500. And maybe even as Brad unfortunately pointed out for the Lions, maybe even if all things work out, have a shot at reclaiming the NFC North here in this matchup.
Yeah, you talk about the playoffs. They're actually still in the division, especially if they win this week. So, And I could definitely see them winning, and I think they will beat Green Bay. Green Bay has not played well. Jordan Love has not been good the last 3 weeks now after starting off 2-1. Yeah, I like Minnesota in this spot. Jordan Addison, like Justin said, finally breaking out a little bit, and then when Justin Jefferson comes back soon, that's going to be a good 1-2 punch for Minnesota. The only thing Minnesota has to do right now is start to run the ball better. Other than that, I mean, that offense is looking really good. I mean, Kirk Cousins not only beat the 49ers, but they beat them on Monday on a prime time game, which is something we don't see, right? 2 shockers in one night. So maybe Kirk Cousins is over that. I think, to be honest, just add a little bit more. I think Minnesota should go ahead and give Kirk Cousins an extension. He wants to be there. Like when they were asking if he wanted to get traded here at the trade deadline, he said no. So, I like Minnesota in this spot. I think they got a lot of momentum going right now. So who knows?
Yeah, and he's been good for them. I mean, it is a franchise, if you think about it, that really hadn't had a kind of franchise-like quarterback for a while. I mean, I know they had Favre for a couple years, but, he's done a good job there. He's kept them competitive, and, certainly the Vikings are far.
I don't think the best we've really seen in recent memory was Dante Culpepper.
Yeah,
Randall Cunningham spent a couple of years there, but
Favre had the great first year. Favre was great.
Favre was definitely a couple of years. Culpepper, I think, had the longest run up until now with Cousins.
I think Culpepper had like 5 years there, maybe
5 or 6 years.
Couple years were good, but
like Chris was saying about the extension, I think that's another way keeping Justin Jefferson happy too. He's going to be due for an extension himself.
Yeah,
and real quick, I know the NFL is any given Sunday essentially, but you think about this stretch for the Vikings. They play at the Packers, at the Falcons, home Saints, at Denver, home Chicago. You can't tell me that they can't win all 5 games there.
Yeah.
By the way, they play the Raiders after the bye, a team that they're better.
Listen, they could even win 3 of the 5, and you're very much alive to be. Because if you look at the wild card picture now, 3 and 4, I think, is the last spot. So I mean, this is very much 9 games is going to probably get you into a wild card. Let me get to some people's thoughts here. John previously wants to say he liked the Dallas Cowboys. Ron has given us those Packer emojis, but I think a lot of people aren't going to be here with you right now on this one. Poor Ron. He's going with the Vikings, John Gonzalez, and Ron's upset about it, but that's just too bad right now because he knows that we haven't been doing good this season. We'll try our best. We got to watch these boys. They just beat the best team in the NFC. They have a lot of momentum. Jordan Love needs to be benched, in my opinion, but who's starting after that? He's making dumb throws and we're only decent in the second half.
That backup anyway.
I mean, that tells you why that Jordan Love is going to be starting for the remainder of the future, and that's why I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings because, again, all the signs here point to the Minnesota Vikings here winning and winning comfortably, even though it is in Green Bay. But something tells me here that in a 1:00 matchup that I certainly would want to go with the Minnesota Vikings just again because you've got the momentum. And Ron says some guy named Clifford. Well, he ain't starting. That's just what I'm
Big
going
red
to
dog,
The former Penn
was
State
gonna
kid,
say.
Sean Clifford.
He ain't starting. That's what tells you. But Brad, obviously, I'm going to try to run through as many of these games as possible. So let's go. I'm going to pick and choose some of the games. Obviously, we'll let TBK pick. Obviously, the Ravens as well. But Brad, let's go to a team that obviously you really love picking in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, this is one of your favorites here on Sportswire. I know this is a team you're excited to pick with because they continue time and time again to continue to make you believe, believe in Coach Tomlin
Pittsburgh.
because they're 4-2. And I know one week you want to bury them, the next week you can't. They just find ways to win, and they are playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Jacksonville, to their credit, very impressive. Very impressive on Thursday night. They've got some wins under their resume. They've beat Buffalo, and they're back on track with a few wins in a row. Maybe other than Houston, you say, well, this is Jacksonville's division comfortably. They are 5-2, and they're obviously again in the driver's seat in the AFC South. But that here, Brad, this is where you believe in Coach Tomlin. Jacksonville coming into Pittsburgh. It'll probably be on the colder end of the second half of the weekend. The defense is getting hot right now. And, so tell us why you're going to keep the upset alert on the board, even though the Jacksonville Jaguars, those first place Jaguars, 2.5-point favorites on the road. Why? For those that are listening and watching, tell us why you are picking the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're supposed to put the upset alert back on. But to tell us, for those that are listening and watching,
I guess not.
why are you picking? Are you having technical difficulties right now? Are you having?
You got me on that one because normally technical difficulties do occur, but in this case, they're not occurring. I'm picking the Jaguars. All right.
Yeah.
Listen, there are a few teams in the NFL that I will probably almost every week, unless I feel like I'm forced to do it, no longer pick. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a team I don't even want to mention their name. I'll wait to rant on them later. Okay, but ultimately, I'm not picking those Steelers. Okay, I'm picking the Jaguars. Can actually have reasons for it, Tom Bryce. Okay, because the Jaguars are the better football team. That's why. All right, and I know everybody wants to go and say, oh well, the Steelers, they're whatever 4-2, and they're doing this, they're doing that. Okay. They beat the Rams, give them credit, right? They won a gritty game, one of those games where, you could see them winning. They won a few other games. And I know at home against the Jaguars team that's used to playing in the nice sun and the humidity of Jacksonville.
Tomorrow would be great for them to play because here in the Northeast, we're getting 80 degrees, but they're coming Sunday. So they're going to get the tail end of that, which is probably going to be in Pittsburgh, I think, rain because we're getting rain here in New York on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, so listen, it is going to be a little mucky game, and I know it's not going to be the prettiest of games, okay, on Sunday, but listen, I'm going to put my trust into somebody who's playing elite football right now, and that is Travis Etienne. He has been absolutely amazing, especially in fantasy. He's been great for me. But he's been great on the field. And I think in a game, like you said, it's going to rain. It's going to be a little ugly out there. I think he's going to be the guy to look for that's going to make the plays and make the difference in the game. I know that Pittsburgh's got that stifling defense. They have, TJ Watt there. But at the same time, I do see this being a gritty, grinding, wet weather game. That's going to be the difference between one playmaker and another. And I just think Jacksonville has more playmakers than Pittsburgh, and that is why they're going to win. And like I said, I just can't pick Pittsburgh. I just cannot do it.
Well, you'll probably give them good luck then, because when you certainly praise teams, it's gone the other way. See the Detroit Lions. But, TBK, again, you get a free shot here. Jacksonville is playing some really good football. They've kind of strung together some big wins of late. They got a win against Buffalo. They certainly dominated the Colts. Obviously, Thursday night last week looked pretty good. But then you got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody wants to kind of pile on my Steelers, and everybody wants to say, that this is the year, and, Tomlin is, he's overrated. But here they are again. In, I think, the toughest division in the NFL, and frankly, one of the toughest divisions in all of sports. Your Ravens are right there at the top, 4-2. So, what do you say here is Jacksonville is kind of surprising to me, at least considering the conditions, 2.5-point favorites on the road against those here we go Steelers, 1:00 game.
Tom, this one's for you.
I don't drink those, but you can drink for me. I'm not a drinker.
Fair enough. It'll never happen again, but I got to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
And here's the reason why.
Oh, don't do it, TBK. Don't do it.
I gotta do it because it's a home game. It's in the elements, and you know what? Rough and sloppy is the Steelers' style.
It's always been their way because as long as I can remember growing up over the last 20 plus years, Steeler football in these conditions, they win. They win.
And TBK knows it well too.
I was on a roll.
He's a guy. He knows.
But no, you know and I would even say now a lot of people are going to go, wait a minute, they're 4-2. How could you say this? Because I would say that this is almost, you know, a must win for Pittsburgh, and the reason that I say that is because in the AFC North, in this division, we've seen it a million times.
Yep.
That the shift can happen, and every game matters, obviously, but in this division especially, you got a team like Jacksonville who, again, when they're hot, they're hot. They're coming into your house. You're behind my boys. You're looking to make that statement. You're looking to stay relevant. You've got to make a statement at home. That is the only reason why I'm picking Pittsburgh. But I just logic. I have to go with the Steelers.
Well, Justin, again, Jacksonville has definitely been impressive of late. They got off to the slow start. Obviously, we questioned them a little bit, but you know they got a couple of nice wins strung together. And then the Steelers, other than I think the Texans game, have pretty much kind of been what TBK has said. They've been in most of these games, have been kind of close, kind of Steelers, muck it up, you know, defensive, low scoring, time of possession, defensive type games. And be that as it may, Jacksonville is 2.5-point favorites here on the road. And, you know, what do you think here in this 1 o'clock key matchup for both teams?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Steelers offense, to me, the Steelers offense sets back football. I mean,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, anybody could say that.
I mean, right now, you're looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars having the 32nd ranked pass defense against the Steelers offense, which is the 28th ranked passing offense in terms of passing yards. So I think that's something that negates itself. The Steelers are 23rd against the run, and like Brad mentioned, I think this is a big time game for Travis Etienne. I think that's what it's going to have to be. You know, I know we're expecting some bad weather here on Sunday for Jets Giants, so I can imagine Pittsburgh could be affected by some of that too. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have they have the 30th ranked the 30th ranked rushing offense. They don't run the ball well. Najee Harris has not been great. Jalen Warren's been okay, but he's more of a pass catcher out of the backfield. So the combination of Kenny Pickett, you know, not really doing all that much within the pass game and the run game being kind of inconsistent and to borderline poor. The Jaguars are going to score enough points here. I'm going to take the Jaguars here. And maybe nothing really that Lawrence does so special. Could be one of those 200 yards, maybe a touchdown or two. But really, it's going to be a lot of grinding it out with Travis Etienne in this game. So I do like the Jaguars in this game.
And for the weather, it's going to be 57 kickoff, 62% chance of rain. So that's pretty much
it's not going to be fun.
Muck it up conditions. Whereas tomorrow in Pittsburgh is going to be 77. Here in New York is going to be 80. So that's kind of the way it is. But, you know, Chris, again, Pittsburgh is in their usual kind of spot in a usual type game for them. But, you know, Jacksonville, I think, has certainly come back and has certainly shown that they're probably going to be in firm control of the AFC South probably here through the rest of the season, but it's a key matchup for both teams. AFC North, we've spoke about, just an incredible division, and Jacksonville wants to prove that maybe they're making the next step. So what do you think here as Jacksonville is 2.5-point favorites, 1 o'clock kickoff?
Yeah, I think the bad weather and the elements might even help Jacksonville, right? Just for the points that we're bringing up, that Jacksonville could run the ball more and just run it down their throat and just kind of win this game in that sense, you know, because I don't know how Pittsburgh scores points. because their offense is just horrible.
It's atrocious.
And how do they got 3 wins is beyond me. I still don't know how they beat Baltimore a couple of weeks ago.
They got 4.
I don't know how they beat Baltimore a couple of weeks ago. I still mind-boggling. But anyway, Jacksonville 4 straight. I know Pittsburgh's won 2 straight. Jacksonville playing, I think, much better. They're scoring a lot of points the last 2 weeks, over 30 points, when offense has been kind of down in the league this year. So I think Jacksonville is going to win this game. I forget about being at home and listen. And I know TJ Watt can take control of a game on his own on defense, but I think Jacksonville will figure that out and then win this game.
And the Steelers are a -24 that you're asking. They're 4-2 and a -24, which is
unbelievable.
That's kind of been where they are. And before I pick, because people are probably going to chuckle at who I pick. I mean, you probably know the answer, but I'll play along. Ravens are my second team. They're going to blow out the Cardinals. Yeah, we'll pick that for fun. John is going with Jacksonville. Ron is going with Jacksonville. But Brad, who do you think I'm going with?
Those damn Steelers.
And I'm glad that people actually made the reason as to why I was going with the Steelers, because it's going to be, again, now we're talking the end of October now the weather conditions sort of take a factor, an element. A team like Jacksonville really hasn't played in those conditions and those factors, and the Steelers defense can take over a game. I was listening to Chris and Sharman talk about this, and we'll get to it at the end in a little while with the Jets. The Jets defense has the ability to win a game, right? They can take over a game. The Denver Broncos, and I think it was Michael Pallas on his podcast, our newest addition to Sportswire, his JUBG podcast, was talking about the same thing, and the fact that a defense can win a game. And the Steelers defense has won them 3 games this year. Yep. Won them the Cleveland game, won them the Baltimore game, and it won them the Raiders game. So you look at it, the Steelers defense can take over a game, and Kenny Pickett is obviously, probably on the Zach Wilson par of ability. And, that's kind of still at the end of the day here, because of those reasons, those elements, I'm going with the Steelers. But I always go with the Steelers, but I at least want to give you a reason to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers. So those are my reasons. I'm sticking to it here. We'll go to the 425 games last, but I want to go over a couple of other 1 o'clock games of note. And let's go to one here, which I think is a really interesting one for the brute force Bradley Weiss to pick. And that is those Atlanta Falcons, one of your favorites, Brad, because I had to do it, one of your favorite teams. The Atlanta Falcons and the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, we're hearing the footsteps about Derrick Henry, what his future will be. But, the Falcons are 2.5-point favorites here on the road against Tennessee. And, Brad, I'm curious where you go, because, obviously you love the Falcons. And you want to pick them, but you're obviously behind here in the standings. And you're thinking, you know what, let me go put the upset alert on the board, because I always have bad luck with the Falcons. So for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, tell us here why Derrick Henry could be going out with a bang here, and you're picking the Titans. See, I told you, Brad, I knew there was a will, there was a way, and tell us why.
It's funny, when I was thinking about making this pick, I heard Tom Bryce in my ears. Basically saying to me, well, this is an opportunity for you to try to get one here, okay? And it's a good one for me to try to get with a team that I can't stand. And again, I'm not going to get angry and upset, because I'm going to save that for another team that I have a friend working for that is arguably the biggest atrocity to picks I've ever had before, okay? But
We're picking them next. Go ahead.
Okay, but anyway, let me get to this game, okay? I know that the Tennessee Titans has rumors all over the place about trades. They already made one, by the way, for one of their guys. So they're, shopping and they're doing some wild quarterback trio this weekend, potentially, when it comes to playing Levis. And they're going to play, I don't even know if Tannehill's going to play, but they're also going to play Willis. Like, they're going to have like a bunch of guys rotating, supposedly.
It's almost like the opener in baseball. Why don't we just have the opener for quarterbacks?
That's kind of what they're doing, what it sounds like they're going to do. But in the end, listen to me. I know, the dumbest team beat the Buccaneers last week. But I'm not surprised to beat the Buccaneers now, because the Buccaneers, I told you a couple weeks ago, weren't that great when the Lions beat them. So I'm not surprised by that. It was a divisional game. It was ugly. It wasn't pretty, and they barely beat them, So listen, the Tennessee Titans, who are not a good team. I'm not going to say they're not a good team, but they know how to win games like this against these type of teams. I mean, you've seen them do it before, where they're kind of like you don't know they're coming, right? Some weeks, like some weeks they look good, some weeks they look bad. Right? This is one of those weeks where I feel like they feel confident they can win this game with whoever they have. And I think that it will happen. I think they're going to get the job done. Okay, I just hope they get the job done because this is a game. Well, I got to just say exactly what Tom Bryce would say. I know everybody's going with the Falcons, okay? So I need a game like this, okay, to get back into the standings. So I'm going with Tom Bryce's reasoning to pick this game. Plus, I don't like the damn Falcons. Give me the Titans to win this game.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I would have said, actually. Yeah, pretty much what it was. I would have
Exactly what you would have said. I just literally said exactly what you would say.
Pretty much. I give you that much. You've known me for almost 4 years now, so that makes sense. Okay, TBK, I'll hopefully try to follow this up. So the Falcons and the Titans, these are two teams that obviously I think most people, Brad makes an excellent point, though, regardless of what you think, really are like two of the worst teams you can pick. I mean, they're like, in Vegas odds, they're like the worst teams can pick. And while we're doing that, the Diamondbacks and Rangers are playing a classic right now, 5-5, and we'll see if Texas can win it here. But, the Falcons are in first place. They're in first place in the NFC South, and the Titans are 2-4, and they pretty much are, looks like, heading for a new direction, a new way of doing things. But, what do you think here as the Falcons are 2.5-point favorites on the road against the Titans, 1 o'clock kickoff?
Well, I mean, all signs would point to the team with the better record. All signs would point to, a team that very, very potentially here in the next upcoming weeks could lose their entire identity.
Pretty much.
And that identity could be sitting right where he belongs with my boys. And, all signs would point to the Falcons, but you know what? I'm taking the Titans, and I'm taking the Titans because, again, I feel like number one, this is not only a must-win game because of the standings, but because of morale. If you're about to lose one of your superstars, you've got to have something to feel good about. So a win is a win is a win at this point. They need all the morale boosters that they can get. And if I'm the Titans, I'm going into every game looking to win. So I'm going with the Titans.
Interesting. Justin, the Atlanta Falcons are in first place, and I say it loosely. They're in first place at 4-3, and the Tennessee Titans are in 2-4, and they're in last place in the AFC South. But yet, if you probably watch these teams, and there really isn't that much of a difference from them, but the Falcons are playing in a much weaker division, but they are less 2.5-point favorites here on the road. And these are two teams, again, I say this, almost nobody really has any faith in picking, but somebody we think has to win here. And what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of spots on both sides of the ball that really cancel each other out. I mean, the whole quarterback situation with Tennessee, obviously it sounds like Levis is going to get the start. With the Ryan Tannehill injury, Desmond Ritter's not been good, despite their 4-2 record. The one thing that's really been surprising over the first few weeks of the season is Atlanta's defense has actually been pretty solid for the most part. They played strong on the defensive side of the ball, and I think that's got to be something that Arthur Smith has to be really happy with, because for the longest time, especially towards the end of Matt Ryan's career with the Falcons, their Achilles heel always felt like their defense. It always felt like they were good offensively, mediocre defensively, and that's why they could never win a big game. Now their offense is total garbage, but their defense is, they're pretty good. They got some good pieces on that defensive side of the ball. And Tennessee, they're going to struggle. And I think that the Falcons defense are going to key in on Derrick Henry. I think Ritter could do enough where it creates some space for Bijan Robinson, provided Bijan Robinson plays. I mean, that's something that didn't go untalked about this week. The whole situation with Bijan Robinson, not on the injury report yet, only got like 4 snaps on Sunday. Apparently, it was due to some illness that he was dealing with, and Tyler Algier got the bulk of the carries. But it sounds like Robinson's good to go. Robinson's back, and the emergence of Drake London, if they can get Kyle Pitts a little more consistently involved, I think that'll help Desmond Ridder. So I'm going to take the Falcons here.
All right, and Chris, again, it's interesting because the Atlanta Falcons, another team, kind of like the Steelers. The Falcons are a -18, but they're in first place. But again, I say it loosely. They're in first place. And the Titans are, again, a -14. So in a lot of ways, they're similar teams. But again, the Falcons are favored. I say it loosely. They're favored here on the road, 2.5-point favorites. And, what do you think here in a matchup, really, that if you had a chance to avoid to pick, you would definitely avoid to pick, but we're picking it here.
Exactly. I think with Tennessee, they're already, starting to turn this roster over. They traded away Bayard to Philly early in the week. This might be the last games of a lot of these players, especially Derrick Henry and a few other players that they could trade away. So, and they're turning, the ball over to turning the quarterback position over, like we mentioned already, to Levis, who didn't really look that good in the preseason anyway. So I'm not expecting him to perform that well. And Ritter just has to play like Zach Wilson is for the Jets. Just don't turn the ball over, right? Just don't screw the game up. Just hand the ball off, no turnovers, and you're going to be fine. And I think Ritter could do that. You'd like to see him step it up a little bit more, but that's why and like Justin said, Atlanta's defense has actually played pretty well this year. And I think they'll continue it, and I could see Atlanta winning this game pretty easily.
This will definitely be a slow and prodding, boring football game to watch. This would be one of those games, if you have a red zone
game, field goal.
Yeah, this will be one of those games. It'll almost be like in hockey but Justin maybe won't appreciate it. But when the Devils were winning those Stanley Cups and playing the trap, this will be like one of those type of games here. So it'll just avoid it if you can at the 1:00 hour if you got red zone. But let me get to before I pick some of the games here from the guys. Ron wants to go with the Titans. John Gonzalez going with the Titans, and he has a reason why. The Falcons are mediocre at best. Yeah,
Fair.
they're mediocre.
Yeah,
The Titans, though.
Fair.
Right?
And that's why I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons, because as much as I want to pick the Titans, I don't see anything that's shown me enough to pick them. I think Atlanta does just enough here to win. They do just enough to win this game, but it'll be like a 14-10 kind of game, 16-10.
Did everybody see what Tom just did to Brad?
Yep.
He got him hooked. He hooked him right on Tennessee.
Yep. And then
got him to pick him, and then I think I'm gonna go with Atlanta.
But we're not chasing each other. So to me,
just saying, Brad.
Listen,
watch out for what he's doing to you.
Brad's deal is Rob Maraska. I mean, Brad ain't thinking about me. He's thinking about Rob Maraska. I'm in second place. So
I won't lie to you. I am thinking about Rob Maraska, but I'm thinking about 500 first. You got to crawl before
you're
you
not
walk.
thinking about Rob Maraska. You're thinking like, how is this guy with a beard who probably is the baseball card guy? He's like the guy in the Simpsons episode that had the comic book store and sits there with the soda drinking and the baseball cards. He's like the baseball card guy. It's like that's what he is. He's the baseball card. Rob is like the baseball card guy. Like he's the and he looks like, for those that remember, like I know Chris will probably remember this because he's a bit older than me even, like you remember like in growing up in Brooklyn, you had the baseball card shops. Rob is the quintessential baseball card store owner. He probably knows every baseball box, every, insert, everything else, but, other things, it may not necessarily be his strength, but he also, this is a funny one. Yeah, this game's going to be like Rey Mysterio versus Logan Paul crown jewel. No, I think Rey and Logan will be a good match. I disagree with that. And I see TBK kind of agrees with me on that. Bruder's only worried about beating me. No, he just admitted that he's worried about Rob Maraska because he's wondering, like, how is this guy who's a baseball card shop owner, looks like a baseball card shop owner, is the contest man, is beating me in picks. And that's really what it is. I mean, Brad basically admitted it. So, Brad, I actually, because you kind of mentioned one of our old former guests on the Sportswire Radio who works for a team that you absolutely love in the Washington Commanders. So I have to bring them up because I'm going to try to go through as many games. I may skip through a couple in the interest of time, but I have to go with you here in these Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. I know you're thinking here, you're looking at the Commanders and you're saying, what happened last week against the Giants? This team, the decisions and everything else. But, you're thinking about your old friend who I believe your old friend, you got to give him a congratulations, by the way, because I believe he's engaged, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that Kyle is engaged, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Jake, Jake.
Oh, okay, Jake. I can't at this point. I forgot the last time
They
came
look the
on
same, so I get
They
it.
look the same, and I'll be honest, I couldn't pick them out of a lineup at this point. I mean, they haven't been on here in 3 years. They probably have no idea we even exist at this point because they're so far ahead of the curve and they're in their own bubble. But obviously, one of them got engaged. The other one's got probably the better of the lots anyway because he's got a job with the Washington Commanders, your beloved team. So for those that are listening and watching, tell us why you've got the lock of the week of the upset alert for going with the Washington Commanders. 6.5 point underdogs here.
So last time I was on the show, Chris told me, okay, I got to get a screen for lock of the week. And I said, sure, I'm going to do it.
Actually pretty clever. I'm wondering, so who hooked you up to figure that out, though?
It was nothing crazy. I just found a nice image and we put it on the slideshow. That's all we did. I mean, I could have done more work with that. But anyway, listen, it looks good, doesn't it? Okay, it looks good. So listen, let's make it
clear. For this game, but okay.
Oh, I'm using it for this game. All right, because listen carefully. All right, the Washington damn Commanders. Okay, finally. All right, 2 weeks ago, I got them right. Thank God. And then what do they back it up with? What do they back it up if they pick them again against the lowly, disgusting, disgraceful Giants? What do? They lose to the Giants. They play like hot trash.
Oh, my God.
You got one of their linemen, cursing, this is just doing this again. We're just sucking again, doing this. I mean, are you kidding me? Like these Commanders, like one time they get it right and then they get it wrong again. So what do I think they're going to do? Okay, what do I think they're going to do? Okay, what I think they're going to do is get destroyed by the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, wow. and I am so hoping for it because I hate this team, the Commanders. I really hate them. I hope they lose by 40. Okay, and that's what I want to see. But in the end, what I do need, okay, is them to win by 2 touchdowns, the Eagles, and that's what I see. That's what I think is going to happen, Chris Pizzea. Okay, and that is why that is up there. Okay, it is my lock of the week this week that the Eagles will win by 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. Okay, and that damn lineman who was cursing, I hope he curses again. Okay, because they better get their act together, and I'm sick and tired of their nonsense. And they single-handedly, if I got them right, would be 10 games over 500 in the picks instead of 2 games under.
TBK, how do you follow this up? I mean, that's what I want to know. How do you follow this up? I mean, the brute force family wife just basically went off as if he was back on the basketball court again.
I hate the Commanders.
A lot of anger there. It almost felt,
a lot of grunge there. A lot of grunge.
Almost like a touch of the personal.
It's personal. It is personal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna text Jake Supran too that it is personal. I'm gonna let him know.
Do that.
I'm
all
sure.
of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll appreciate that. I'm sure he will.
You know what? This is the longest yard game, man. This is the mean machine versus the guards. The Philadelphia Eagles are gonna have a field day with Washington. There's not much that needs to be said. I'm not gonna say much anyway. It's the Eagles easy.
All right, Justin obviously is away, so we're gonna skip him. And Chris, obviously your Eagles here on the spot. The Eagles, I think, did redeem themselves. If you doubted them the previous week against the Jets, and I think this was one of the more impressive performances, I think, of the Eagles in a game a lot of people were really excited about. But they follow this up and go to the Washington Commanders, and Brad has obviously said a lot about the Commanders. But what do you think here about the Philadelphia Eagles, conversely, 6.5 point favorites on the road?
I'm with you guys. I think Philly should win this game by a couple of scores, easy. But the problem is Washington always plays Philly tough, right? We've seen it.
Yeah, last year, Monday night. Yeah.
Last year they beat them.
Earlier in the year, a few weeks ago.
So but I'm not going to bet against Philly. I think they're going to cover. They should cover this 6.5, 7 points, whatever it is. But don't be shocked if it's a close game. That's all I'm going to say. Because Washington is kind of, Sam Howell he's had a couple of good games, but he's also had a
couple of clunkers. I mean, he's had even
so he's gone both ways. So and they're playing at home. Maybe Washington.
Weather will be lousy.
Yeah. So maybe the backdoor cover, but no, I'm going to stick with Philly covering, and they'll be able to win pretty easy.
Justin, in the interest of time and for the remaining games, I'm going to go like 30 seconds on some of them. So real quick, Eagles Commanders, what do you think?
I mean, if you watched the Commanders last week, that's all you need to know about how badly Philadelphia is going to beat them. That last week, that was absolutely disgusting. So give me Philadelphia.
All right, here. Let me get to some of these comments here. John likes the Birds. Ron here goes Commanders. I'm always against the Eagles. Sam Howell is awful. Brad is going off. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure on Instagram. That which Supran am I tagging? Give me the right
Jake.
one.
So Jake is the one that works
We'll
the
make sure
Commander.
we'll tag
He's
Jake.
also the one that's engaged, so I don't want to disappoint him. But at the same time,
No, I
it
think
is
we should
personal.
tag him, even though I know
Oh, yeah, let
we'll
him know.
tag him, but I do know the politics of it. Like, he won't share it on his Instagram story because he will be afraid to lose his job. But we'll still make sure that we tag him on it just to give him a friendly knock on the door. That almost like the Wet Bandits in Home Alone, like, we're here and this is what we think. So I wanted to make sure that he notices that. But Brute needs to be locked up. This behavior started when he was stealing the towels back at the first weekend of the season. That was what it was. He was stealing the towels there. But I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, because you know why I'm going with the Eagles? Because I feel like, Brad, you have one point I agree with. I feel like we've picked the Commanders like 3 or 4 times this season. Every time they let us down. So now at this point, like, I can't pick them because I don't trust them.
Absolutely
I do not trust to pick them. So, and I think Philadelphia wins it, but I don't think it'll be like a 30-point, 40-point game. You say I do actually think that the Commanders, in a lousy weather environment, maybe 24-14, 24-10, you know. But let's go because I got obviously TBK here, and I do want to for fun because we have Baltimore, Arizona, and we'll pick the Sunday night games, and then we'll do the Giants. That'll be our last one. The rest of them, you pick on your own and tell us what you think. But Brad, we have TBK here, so we'll do the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, the Ravens here, an emphatic win. If you doubted the Ravens before last week, you're not doubting them anytime soon, as the Texas Rangers, by the way, have just defeated the Arizona Diamondbacks, who have won the first game of the World Series here. So certainly it was a classic. It was a gem, and we were on the air long enough to see the Rangers come back and take game one and have a 1-0 lead. We'll see how the series goes up here. But Brad, I mean, obviously, I would love to sell you on the Arizona Cardinals, but there really isn't much I could sell you on here at this point. It's almost like trying to sell a cake here that doesn't have like any filling. But if you want to go with the Arizona Cardinals and you're upset alert, you could tell us why you want to pick them over the Baltimore Ravens, because they are 8.5-point favorites here, 425.
So. All right.
Oh,
this is another one where Tom Bryce's influence kind of got to me here. Okay? But you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I took the education of TBK and what he's told me in the past, right? And let this come in, and I actually took his education. Because what TBK has told me in the past,
you paid a lot of money for your education, though, in Patchogue. You paid a lot of money for that education.
No, I'm listening to the Baltimore kid. He's the guy that watches the team. He's a fan of the team. And what he told me weeks back is that when the Baltimore Ravens play teams that are mediocre to them, they don't do their job. Like, they don't separate the game like they should. Example with the Colts earlier this season. Okay. You know, other teams, like, they went to a very good team at home against a very good team at home and dominated. They've done that against good teams, but I have not seen them really dominate a bad team so far. Okay. And that's why I'm going to take a gamble. I'm not going to say that Baltimore loses. I'm going to take Baltimore to win. But for some reason, something is telling me, okay, that this is going to be another one of those games where it's going to be 23-9 late in the game. All right. And it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals are coming down that field, right? And they're going to score a touchdown, all right? And they're going to get that extra 2-point conversion or something, okay? And they're going to cover the spread. I just see it happening for some reason. Give me the Cardinals with the spread. This is a risk, but I'm going to take it.
Well, you know, TVK, I think a lot of people look at you because, you know, the Ravens, I mean, they spanked our Lions here. Then the brute force, Brad Weiss. Well, I appreciate that he's actually put the upset alert on the board, but like, I don't really know what I could have sold him on in this case to go with the Ravens, but I'm going to let you, obviously, you know, with the driver's seat, because you haven't been on here in a couple weeks. And, you know, I guess maybe the point that Brad says, you know, the Cardinals are at home. Cardinals have played, they did beat Dallas in this spot. Maybe, Brad, that's the one point you left out. You know, Arizona did beat Dallas earlier in the year in this spot, but, you know, Ravens are 8.5-point favorites on the road against the Cardinals. And, you know, tell us why you're picking the Ravens.
Well, Brad is absolutely right, and that was actually going to be one of my points. Is unfortunately, the Ravens do have that Achilles heel of not performing against teams that we should absolutely dominate. But hey, Justin,
Yeah.
we still overrated, buddy?
You came back at just the right time, right? Well, went into hiding after that Pittsburgh loss. You came right back after
I'm just curious, brother, because we went over to London, right? Now we didn't dominate the Titans, but a team like us who has struggled overseas, we got the win. Then we chose not to take the bye, came back and absolutely dominated the Lions at home. Controlled the entire game, right? So now there's talks potentially on down the line of getting a Derrick Henry. There's, what did I tell you guys? I told you guys if this offense started to heat up, you weren't going to be able to stop us. Imagine what happens if we get a Derrick Henry in the backfield. You go ahead and you sit Mr. Hot Hands, Mr. Justice Hill. You still got Gus, who's been performing all year, right? Goodness gracious. This team is going to be scary. Now, against the Arizona Cardinals, again, history would tell me that we absolutely should dominate this team. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But I'm confident that for a team, again, who, and I keep saying it, and I know you guys are tired of it by now, but for a team that is in the hardest division in the NFL, who is absolutely just coming off of a monster statement win, there's no doubt in my mind, we roll into Arizona, we roll out with a huge win. Ravens all day.
Well, Justin, I'll let you respond, obviously, because you obviously addressed you in a couple different ways. But, leave that aside. Ravens are 8.5-point favorites against the Cardinals. And, what do you think here in this matchup of the hapless Cardinals and those first place now rebounding Baltimore Ravens?
Well, I got to be honest. The performance last week against the Detroit Lions, I think that definitely changed my view and ways of the Baltimore Ravens, especially if they're going to have that kind of passing attack. They're going to be hard to stop. I mean, Lamar Jackson, we all know the threat he is with his legs. At times has not been the most accurate passer, but in this first year under Todd Monken, he's up over 70%, and that's just deadly because they've always been a top tier rushing team. Despite the injuries, right? Despite the inability of J.K. Dobbins to stay healthy, right? Gus Edwards, a very solid running back, but it almost seems like the Ravens have injury after injury at running back, and they still perform. Now, TBK mentions the possibility, and I heard this too, of potentially adding a Derrick Henry. Holy Lord, I don't even know what could happen to this offense. I mean, it could just be that good. To me, I don't see this as a trouble spot, even going out west to Arizona. I really don't even see this being much of a trouble spot for the Ravens. I think they win rather comfortably.
Chris, again, Ravens here in a spot that certainly should be ripe for them to comfortably win here. But, maybe there is a point that, Brad makes. Listen, Dallas was here in Arizona, and they overlooked the Cardinals, and that's their only win of the season. But Baltimore has all the momentum, and they are 8.5-point favorites, 4:25 p.m. kickoff. What do you think?
Listen, I think what we've seen, what the Ravens did this past weekend is what this team is capable of, obviously, and maybe Lamar Jackson is finally getting learning that offense, that Todd Monken offense, much better, and he's starting to turn into an actual good passer of the football. Forget about all the other stuff he could do, but imagine if he could do what he did last week and just be a really good passer of the football to add to what he could do on the football field. That would be an unbelievable offense. And then, like Justin said, if you're talking about adding Derrick Henry to this team, I mean, this team could get unstoppable on offense if that does happen, right? But this could be one of those games where Arizona, with a late score. Kyler Murray is healthy now. You may even see him. Not that he could do anything that well, especially having played in almost a year. But I think Baltimore is gonna. They're on a roll now. You're gonna see them put up some big time points now. And I think they cover easily.
All right, here, and let me get to what some of these guys think. Also, John Gonzalez has a funny line here. Baltimore, Ron likes the Ravens. Brute continues with his bad behavior, picking Arizona. Yeah, I mean, Brad, look, I'm happy you did it, though. I'm definitely happy. I didn't even have to sell you on this one. You basically, just did it.
Tom loves those. Tom loves those.
I didn't have to sell you on this. My line was even that it's like making a cake without the filling. You just basically went for it. The Ravens spanked those little kittens. Nelson looking good, too, I think. Is Odell playing Sunday? Is Odell Beckham playing Sunday?
I'm pretty sure he is.
Okay. Well, be that as it may, I mean, Brad, I love that you picked the Cardinals because I'm going with the Ravens again, basically. I'm going with the Ravens. Going with the Ravens. But I'm not your competition. It's the baseball card guy. It's the card, it's the baseball card shop owner. So
he's got to catch a couple other people before he gets to the baseball card guy.
He's got a few guys.
Get the 500 first, Chris. 500.
There you go. That's it. One step.
Let's hope you get there. I mean, you see you get there. But yeah, it's just hard to pick. I know, because Brad, I have to say, I tried what you did a few weeks ago with the 49ers and Cardinals, and I got burned by it late because the Cardinals actually had an opportunity to cover the spread, and they got picked off in the end zone late. So I thought about what you did, and I was like, I tried it like 2 weeks ago, and I'm not going to try that again. But I'm glad you did. But, for the interest of time, let's go to the Sunday night, the Monday night, and then the Jets-Giants, just because of the interest of time. And there's a bunch of games here, most of them, kind of games we really wouldn't have glanced over anyway. So let's go. Real quick here, let's go to the Sunday night game here, and it's kind of a clunker. It's our old friend Anastasia Rossinia and her Los Angeles Chargers and the Chicago Bears. And Brad, again, the Chargers, one of the bigger disappointments in the league, and the Bears. I mean, this is one of these games. I mean, when do they flex these games? We got 2 more weeks to flex. This would be a perfect game to flex. We should be really having the 49ers and Bengals. That should be the game that they should replace with it. But, Brad, I guess I could say this would be a great one for you to keep the upset alert on because, what you think about here, the everything with the Bears, maybe they have a little bit of momentum. The Chargers, just really to me, I mean, I think that their coach is going to be hitting the bricks. So for those that are listening and watching, tell us here why on Sunday night you're going to keep the upset alert and maybe the Bears not only cover, but maybe get an outright win over these disappointing Chargers.
Yeah, Tom, you're 100% right. I'm keeping it up there, and I'm picking the Bears with the spread. I'm not maybe as confident they're going to win, but the Chargers are allergic to covering the spread. I mean, they barely do it. All these big spreads, I mean, they can't handle them. So I feel very confident in the Bears covering this spread. Whether they win or not is immaterial. They're going to cover the spread.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% on that, but I'll get to me and why I think it. But, TBK, again, this is really one of those games that we should just outright. I know we're a little too early in the flex, but in a couple of weeks from now, this would be classic. We're flexing this game. But Chargers are really big favorites, and I don't really know why they're big favorites here in this spot because they're like one of, to me, the most disappointing teams. Sorry, Anastasia Rossinia. I know she's a diehard Chargers fan, but even she's got to know that her team is just. I think they're going south here this year, and what do you think here in this Sunday night game, which again to me should be classic flex?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's again an interest of time and all that. There's not much that needs to be said. At the very least, pretty much like Brad said, I think the Bears cover the spread, even if that's just all that they do. I mean, I think this is going to be a horrible game. I mean, if you're a fan of either team, you're watching just because your team is playing.
That's it. Yeah, I think rest of America would be like, why am I watching this game?
But us Ravens fans have a soft spot for Chicago because I mean, come on, they gave us Roquan. So yeah. Thank you. But I'll take the Bears to cover the spread, but that's about it.
Justin, again, very quickly, this is, to me, classic game that if we could flex it, we could. Unfortunately, it's not quite flex season yet, but Chargers, to me, have been huge disappointments. And the Bears, I guess they're kind of where they are, but to me, this spread seems a little high, but what do you think?
I like the Chargers in this situation. Even though you felt like at times Tyson Bagent gave the Bears a spark, he doesn't provide what Justin Fields can provide, and that's the electricity with his legs. Fields has done a little bit better as a passer over the last couple of weeks before the injury, and I might not be high in confidence here, but to me the Chargers are just that much better than the Bears, and I think their run game with Austin Eckler, Josh Kelly, I think that Herbert will make plenty of plays in this game. And I think the Chargers are in rather good shape here. I like them to win pretty good here.
I have a funny comment from John Gonzalez, but I'll save it real quick. But, Chris, again, the Chargers to me have been, I think they've been disappointments. I think that this was a team, a lot of people really were a dark horse in the AFC West. And, the Bears, I guess, maybe have been playing a little bit better. They have a couple of wins the last few weeks. And in the NFC, they're alive for a wild card, but it is a Sunday night game, and the Chargers, to me, I think, are 8.5-point favorites. Too high, but what do you think?
Listen, the Chargers should win. On paper, they should destroy this team. They should win by and you know what? I think the Chargers are a much better team, obviously, than they have been showing.
Yeah.
But this is the story of the Chargers going back to from when I started watching football.
Yeah, they've always
just have a history of this, and I think they're going to win, and I think it's going to be an easy win for them. But for some reason, I think the Bears are that backdoor cover is going to come in this game big time, and they're going to get that backdoor cover somehow. This guy Badgett is a Division II quarterback. Nobody knows who he is. He's going to do something, and they'll get a backdoor cover. So I'll take the Bears with the points.
All right, fair enough here. John likes the Bolts. Ron says they're the enemy, but I'm picking the Bears. Their backup did good last week. I have a thought on that in a second. The Bears have been playing a lot better. Somebody stole my thought. The Brute, actually, you are getting flex next week. This is the 1 week we are getting flex. Well, at least the second half of the week. You are getting flex. Well, you are getting flexed, and literally the owner of FCW is Fletch, and you are getting flexed. So you're getting flexed, and at least you get a week off for your voice, Brad. I'm sure your voice will be 100%.
We're off this week, I think, with John Gonzalez.
Well, I'm actually picking. I actually think the Bears are going to outright win the game. I think something tells me.
Wow.
Wow.
I think the Bears are
huge upset. This is a real upset alert.
Yeah, but the Chargers in every spot. I know Anastasia Rossinya, big Chargers fan, and she's one of these people. Like you can't talk to her during the game, and that's we appreciate all the support on Sportswire. But to me, this Chargers team has just been a big disappointment. You can't trust them in these spots. And I think the Bears have played a little bit better football enough that I could see them pulling off the upset. And, really, I agree with some of the guys here. The Chargers should win this game by 3 touchdowns, but they won't because the Chargers don't win games by 3 touchdowns. They've got a coach that almost coaches to lose, makes stupid decisions.
He's done.
So even if they win, he's done. This team's not going anywhere. I think the Bears, again, as crazy as to say this, if they win in the NFC, they're very much alive. And we'll get to one team that'll have those aspirations in a few minutes here. But, in the interest of time, we're going to go with the Monday night game here last. And, Brad, I can't wait to go to you here first on this because I know that you're not going with the upset alert on this matchup. I'll be very disappointed in you if you will. All right, but obviously I'm talking about the Detroit Lions and the Las Vegas Raiders. You want to talk about coaching changes also in the AFC West. This will probably be one of those spots that'll be open. We spoke about that a few weeks here. But the Lions here in this spot, I would have to think should redeem themselves. And it's a rare Monday night game in Detroit. We don't get these too often. And I would hope, though, after this, that the Raiders are no longer on primetime. I feel like the Raiders, what have we seen them 3-4 times already in primetime this year? I have no idea why. I hope this is the last time we see them. What's that?
Jets Raiders is Sunday Night Football.
Oh, well, then there you go.
Ugh.
That's another. Well, that might be flexed, or that could be a flex
Maybe.
matchup. I would say that would be a possible flex. But the point is, the Raiders, I hope not to see them much more in prime time. Lions here, this should be a spot for them to redeem themselves. Bradley Weiss, tell us why you're going with the Detroit Lions, 8.5-point favorites Monday night. Are you ready?
Well, what do I have to tell you when you just told everybody why? I mean, it's very simple. I mean, first of all, I mean, obviously we know what happened last week. They got bum rushed, they got crushed, they got destroyed, everything by TBK's team. Okay,
Right off the bat, yeah.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I can keep going. But anyway, listen, it's actually, I think, a good thing for Detroit because you're going to see a team behind a coach that's very, very high energy, very high, passion. Okay? He's going to come out and he is going to totally have this locker room ready to play this game and the team ready to play this game. And that lesson of what they did last week is going to take them and propel them to this win. So there is no doubt in my mind that the Lions are not only going to win this game, but they're going to win it big. And listen, I'm not going to take any more time with thoughts. I'm just going to throw out this right here because I have it right here on my phone. Okay, I'm looking at everybody's picks. And the man who calls himself a Detroit supporter, a man who is supposed to be the leader of the Lions fan club on this show, decided to take the Raiders with the spread. You, John Gonzalez, all right, this should be considered a crime that you did this on this show. You're the only one that had the guts, and you, the one that told me to support the Lions, the one that got me on the Lions train. You go on the show right now and decide to pick the Raiders, the only one with the spread. You have done something, John Gonzalez. This is a crime on Sportswire Radio. Shame on you.
Well, he's going to have a response. I'll leave that at the end. But, TBK, obviously the Ravens spanked the Detroit Lions, but the Lions are playing the Raiders, who, to me, again, you want to talk about coaching changes. That should definitely be one at the top of the list. We spoke about the Chargers, but, Lions are 8.5-point favorites here Monday night. Very rare for the Lions to be at home on a Monday night. So you saw them up close last week, but what do you think about them this week?
So you know how some teams they'll have sayings over top the tunnel right before they come out and they'll smack it.
Notre Dame was big for that. Yep, Notre Dame was big for that. Yep.
The Lions are smacking the hell out of the word redemption this week. Every single one of them, just as they go by, whap, redemption. So it's easy on this one. If you're the Lion, you're coming out fast, you're coming out quick, you're coming out to put points on the board early. Lions all day.
All day, every day here. We'll see what that. But Justin, again, Lions are in a spot here Monday night at home, rare spot. Raiders, I think plenty about them, but Monday night, Lions 8.5-point favorites here to close out week number 8. The season is flying by, and what do you think here in this matchup?
Yeah, I think the Lions are a humbled football team right now. I think last week was, for them embarrassing. Obviously, like I said, when we picked the Ravens game, it showed me a lot about the Ravens. I think this week will show me a lot about the Lions. The ability to bounce back after a very big loss, and I expect nothing less than for them to go out on their home field on Monday Night Football and to beat the living out of the Raiders. I would take the Lions minus 12.5. Honestly, I could move that line as far as I want, and I would probably take the Lions in this game. I'm confident that Goff will bounce back. The run game will get going with Jahmyr Gibbs, and the receiving core is rounding in shape. Jameson Williams only a few games returned from his suspension. Obviously, we know how good Amon-Ra St. Brown is. The rookie Sam Laporta at tight end. They've got a lot of weapons, and the Raiders are just not going to be able to stop it. Even with Jimmy Garoppolo back, I just don't think they can score enough points to match the Lions. So give me Detroit.
All right, here, Chris, to close out the week 8 of the season. The Detroit Lions, big favorites here over the Las Vegas Raiders, who, again, to me, a team that, I really don't get what they're doing, what they're going for. But that's for a different topic, different time. Monday night, are you ready? Lions, 8.5-point favorites. What do you think?
Yeah, I think after last week, getting embarrassed against Baltimore. Especially their defense. I think Detroit with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's going to have this team fired up to bounce back on national TV on Monday Night Football against a team that we know is going nowhere fast in the Raiders. So I think Detroit's going to win big. Going away, I don't see a backdoor cover in this one. I see Detroit winning by a lot. I don't care who's back for the Raiders. Jimmy G, yeah, he wins a lot of games, but he's not winning this week. Detroit's going to be flying all over the field. They got to bounce back in the worst way. So I see Detroit winning big.
All right, here. Let me get to a few more comments before we get to the last game to pick of the night. John says he likes Detroit, though. He says he's got Detroit. He has a reason why. Ron says you were kind of cutting a promo on that one. Right? It did have a very the wrestling guys here. It had a very wrestling vibe to it. John says that's a mistake. I got Detroit. Somebody is sabotaging me on your league, bro. So he says that he's
well. All you got to do is click the right one. It's not like, it's just wide enough to get the right pick. You just got to press it, John Gonzalez. I mean, this is a big mistake. Like, you can't do this, John Gonzalez. Not again.
Well, we'll see if it decides his season or not. But who do you think I'm going with?
Well, if you go off the train, forget it. You'll hear this for the rest of the season. You better pick Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is an easy one. This is a no-brainer, I would think. Because the Raiders
could be the lock of the week, actually.
I don't go that. I'm personally a very superstitious type. I'm never a believer in that kind of stuff. I'm very superstitious. Anything all my life, I take nothing for granted, for different reasons. But I think here with the Raiders were on the road against the Bears, and the Bears beat them by, 18? Detroit in this spot should be ripe for them at Monday night prime time, a rare home game in Detroit Monday night. I would think here they're going to be ready, and they're going to come away with a big victory. And I like the Detroit Lions, as I always do. But you know what? Again, in the interest of time here, I'm going for our last game, which we saved it, and it doesn't happen too often. It's the New Jersey interstate matchup between the New Jersey Jets and the New York Jets and the New York Giants. I thought somebody would get that was a funny joke there. But, the brute force Brad Weiss, this is an interesting matchup. And I struggled with who to pick here in this. And I'll tell you why I struggle when I get to the end here. But the Jets and the Giants, the Giants got a little bit of momentum. Maybe you like what you see the last 2 weeks from them. Sure, Jets defense has been special. It's been great. I've heard Michael Pallas, our newest addition to Sportswire Radio, talk about the Jets in a way. And he's talking division. He's talking about home playoff games. He's excited. Sharman and Chris had a lot to say about it. I got a chance to listen to a lot of the guys here. But, I'm so curious on where you go because, you're thinking about it. Giants got some momentum. Tyrod Taylor's looking good. Defense back to last year. Then you got your Jets gangrene. I know it's a tough one here. Maybe you had to pull an Anthony Finkel, get the napkin out. Maybe even you had to pull out the baseball card collection like Rob Maraska and pick out who your favorite players were. If you had a helmet, a shirt, maybe you flipped a coin even. So for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, because you know that this is definitely going on Instagram, tell us here, for those that are listening and watching, why you actually picked a New York team.
Tom, I actually have to, before I speak, I got to get back to you. All right, because what was so hard about your pick in this one? What challenge? What momentum are you exactly talking about with the Giants? I'd like to know what that is.
The last 2 weeks, they played good football. I'll go last. You're first, so don't deflect. You're on the stand right now.
All right. Well, listen, I completely and utterly disagree with this being a difficult and picking out off a napkin or flipping a coin type of game. I just don't see it. Listen, and Tom was trying to help me prove my point, but now I'll prove it now. Okay, because listen, which unit is the best unit on the football field? It is the New York Jets defense. Which unit is the worst unit on the team? On the football field? That is the New York Giants offense, okay? So that combination right there gives me all the confidence, okay, in the world that the New York Jets are going to win without even talking about their offense, okay? Because I think the Jets defense will do its part against the Giants. I mean, please. The Giants, they beat the Commanders. I mean, you want to talk about, oh, we commanded them. Come on. I mean, the Commanders are not a good football
But
team.
if they beat the Bills 2 weeks ago, you would be saying, no, the Giants are a good football team. Get out of here.
The Giants are not a good football team. Listen, somebody
but
said
if they won that game, you would have said that.
Hold on. Okay, now it's my time on the stand. All right, listen. Whoever said it earlier, okay, made it clear that he said. I forgot who said the comment. I believe it was Ron, but I'm not sure. He said that the Giants may win one more game and that's it. I agree with him. I mean, what showed me last week? They beat the Commanders. What that's supposed to show me they're going to be great and get better and beat teams like the Jets who have actually played well and have an elite defense? Hell no. I mean, they're not going to do anything against this defense. Okay, Tyrod Taylor. I mean, okay, he's played okay. Okay, please. He's not that good. He's not going to do anything. And the one thing that also gives me confidence is that what we've seen from Zach Wilson recently, like Chris said, lack of mistakes, like just controlling the ball, running the ball, right? Not doing too much. In this rainy game, this should be a Breece Hall game all day. This should be give the ball to Breece and let him go, okay? And ultimately, you let Zach Wilson do the short passes and methodically move down the field. And then when they get the ball, just stop Barkley and make them do something else. Their receivers stink. Make them try to beat you. You have your cornerbacks back, by the way, from concussions. So listen, please, the New York Jets, take care of business on defense, and there's no question at all to me that I should be thinking about the Giants winning this game. In fact, I feel so confident, okay, the Jets are going to win this game by a touchdown. That's how I feel.
All right. Well, obviously, I'll get to more comments at the end, but in the interest of time, TBK, the Jets and the Giants, it's the time of the year where these teams play. It doesn't happen too often. I say it's actually the matchup of New Jersey teams, but there's teams, say, New York. But that's for a different topic, different time. But the Jets are 2.5-point favorites here, I believe, in this matchup. And for those that are listening and watching here on Sportswire Radio, I mean, what do you think here? Because somebody technically from New York has to win.
Yeah, that spread's a little crazy. I think Zach Wilson has the game of his career against the Giants.
Wow.
And it's because of the Giants. But I mean, come on, man. Just if you have to question who's going to win this game, you're not watching this season. It's the Jets all day.
All right, that was short, sweet, and to the point. I was surprised. But, Justin, I'm really curious where you go here because, again, the Jets have definitely had some momentum. The last 3 weeks, they've been a good football team. But, the Giants, conversely, I still disagree with Brad. They have played better football the last 2 weeks, and somebody has to win here in this matchup for two teams that are technically playing at home. But, what do you think here is it is actually the New York Giants that are the home team, but the Jets are the favorites here by 2.5.
All right, before we say the Giants are playing good football, they've scored 23 points in the last two games. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. It's really not. I mean, listen, you played a Buffalo team that had been really in a rut over the last couple of weeks between the trip to
they've been the whole year though, the Bills, other than what the Commanders game?
Between the trip to London, losing last week to New England, the Bills seem all out of sorts. They really do. And so, yes, Wink Martindale and that defense, they ratcheted up the pressure on Josh Allen, and they did a very good job. They had him shut out through three quarters, right? The defense is playing a lot better. I can't take last week's game and give the Giants credit. The Commanders are so bad. I mean, their offensive line is awful. Sam Howell holds the ball too long. He doesn't make the right reads. And they scored 14 points in the second quarter and didn't do a damn thing the rest of the game. And that's supposed to give me confidence in the New York Giants. It's really not. The New York Jets, what have they done this season? They made Jalen Hurts look like a below average quarterback. I mean, the 3 interceptions, two of them were forced by the defense, but that last interception, I don't know what he was seeing on that third down play that Tony Adams took almost to the house and set up the go-ahead touchdown for Breece Hall. And the Jet defense played great against Mahomes, played great against Allen early in the season before they had injuries and they were out of sort, and played great against Jalen Hurts. And to me, the defense is what's going to win this game. And I think that they're going to do enough offensively because the Giants are 29th against the run defensively. And Breece Hall should feast. It should be the Breece feast. I'm going to call this game the Breece feast.
That was a good
And
one.
and we'll find out in a little bit with the locks of the week. There might be a Breece Hall prop in there. However, with that being said, I'm coming out with extreme confidence, and maybe I shouldn't be because I'm a Jet fan. We don't know what confidence is, but the Jets are the better football team, and they should win this game. And I believe they win this game rather comfortably. And I'd go as far as say they win like 21-9.
I could definitely see that type of score, regardless of the outcome, due to the weather conditions, and probably be one of those muck it up kind of games. But obviously, Chris, I know where you're going to go because I listened to the Liftoff Jets here earlier on Sportswire Radio. But for those that are listening and watching again, I'll give you the opportunity to repick this matchup. And the Jets are 2.5-point favorites here. They're technically the road team, but somebody from New York has to win. And for those that are listening and watching, tell us what do you think here in this matchup between two teams on a winning streak?
Listen, the Jets should win, and I think they will win, and I think they're going to cover. I thought the spread was a little too low to begin with because basically the Jets are home too. So I don't think either team's going to have the home field. I know there are probably more Giant fans there, but then again, maybe they won't. With bad weather and the team's not playing well, maybe a lot of Giant fans are giving away their tickets, or selling them. So, but I think the Giants have played well the last couple of weeks, their defense at least. Offense, obviously, is a complete mess. Offensive line, complete mess. But the one part of the Jet defense that they are vulnerable in is against the run. And if the Giants could get some kind of run game going with Barkley, maybe I could see them keeping it close for a couple of quarters, maybe into the third quarter, like they have against Buffalo and even against San Fran when they kept that game close for a while until San Fran pulled away. So I could see the same thing happening, but I think the Jets are going to win. I just don't think it's going to be a blowout. They should win by a couple of scores. I think the Giants are going to keep it close for a while with the weather too. Add that in, who knows what it's going to be like. So, but I still think the Jets pull away and win this one.
All right, here, before I get to my picks, let me go with John. I want to thank the people that tuned in here throughout the show. He goes with the Jets. He goes, no worry, I'm still big in Motown. He's still big in Motown. Good to know. Appreciate that. He says Giants suck, and he was the one that personally said he thought the Giants would win just one more game the rest of the year. He says, I will say this, Taylor looks better than Jones. Yeah, I mean, he has looked, I know it's not saying much, but he has. Wink needs to go back to hosting game shows. Well, that's a different Wink, but I appreciate the joke. He'll be there Sunday, by the way. He will be there, Brad. So if you want to go out there and get a ticket, maybe go there to see John. Be a great moment on Sportswire. It'd be almost like that, just a picture. It'll be like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, that famous picture everybody sees all the time. Gehrig and Ruth. It could be like, Force and Gonzalez. It could be one.
It could be like the superpowers back in the old days going at it,
Oh, boy. I mean, listen, we all know I'd love to meet up with John. We at least got to go to a good game. This is not going to be a good game.
You probably got a basketball game. The only bright spot for the Giants is Thomas will be back at left tackle. He goes here, Jets 20-10. Now, I got
some information for him. It does not sound like Thomas is playing.
Okay, so we confirm that here. That's not going to happen, obviously. We'll get to closing thoughts in a second, but I'm going with the Jets. But I preface this. I did think about picking the Giants because I do think that for whatever reason, this is ripe for the spot that the Giants could win this game because I do think the Giants, they've shown that their defense has played well too the last 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, as crazy as this sounds, you have to ask yourself, who would you rather trust right now in a close game with the conditions the way they are? Tyrod Taylor or Zach Wilson? I think the Jets have just enough weapons at offense. No, I'm serious. Who would you rather trust? And I think that Zach Wilson gets enough of an edge, and I think the Jets have a better defense than the Giants. So I think at the end of the day, in these conditions, this is why I'm picking the Jets, but I think it will be an ugly football game, like the Jets-Patriots game was a few weeks ago. Remember when the weather was bad there that Sunday? It's probably going to be like the same conditions. We're talking, I think its kickoff is 55 and rainy. I mean, so you're talking about, again, 1 o'clock kickoff here in New York and in the New Jersey. It's the same, basically same conditions, and it's going to be those type of conditions. And I think the Jets play a little bit better in there. And again, 1 o'clock, 54 degrees. 68% chance of rain. So there you go. So there you have it. Obviously, there's a few other games we missed. We'll recap those obviously in 2 weeks. We'll see where we are in the standings. A lot to talk about here on Sportswire Radio. By then, we'll have the NFL trade deadline will have passed. We'll talk about more of the playoff stuff. So we'll be going all football pretty much the rest of the way. Maybe a Rob Maraska Met memory if he's on here. I guess you got to give him a few minutes, the baseball card guy. But obviously, let's get to some closing thoughts here. So TBK, I'm going with you first. Obviously, in about 10 minutes here on our internet radio station, we're getting a marathon of your shows. So look forward to that. So I turn it over to you, my friend. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? Floor is yours.
Guys, great show as always. Feels good to be back. Obviously you guys can follow me at xxt.b.kxx92 on Instagram. The Be More Talkative podcast, we are kind of flirting with the idea of doing a 2-a-week episode. So maybe doing one on Monday, one on Friday. But as per usual, episodes will come out every Monday, 12 p.m. noon EST. Follow that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me.
Looking forward to it. Obviously, you have a new one coming up with a singer from the band Ricochet years ago. So
yes, sir.
I'm looking forward to that. Also, obviously, our friends from the IMF and WCE and DKW will hear that also. So good stuff there. So, Chris, I'm going to go with you next. Obviously, looking forward to your closing thoughts. Obviously, we'll get a recap, I'm sure, of the first 2 games of the series, or maybe a few other games in the middle of the week on Sportswire, maybe Monday, and obviously Liftoff Jets. Looking forward to you and Sharman recapping the Jets and Giants outcome. So I turn it over to you for some closing thoughts, and anything else you want to plug, share, or say. Floor is yours.
Tom, thank you very much, guys. Great show as always. Me and Patrick will be kind of recapping the first 2 games of the series probably on Monday, World Series, and after tonight, it looks like it's going to be a great series.
Absolutely.
We're both saying it's probably going to go 7 games. He obviously going to stick with Arizona. I went the other way just for the show. I'm going to go with Texas. So that should be interesting. And of course, on Wednesday, we're going to recap Jets Giants. Like I said, it's probably going to be an ugly game and hopefully a big win for the Jets because this will keep them going. And who knows, with the weaker schedule, maybe they can make the playoffs this year. And
well, our buddy Michael from was talking about he had some real interesting expectations.
Yeah, and you never know. And by the end of the year, and who knows if, and with Aaron Rodgers, looming his return, if that guy could ever return from that injury this soon, it would be just amazing. So I'm not expecting it, but you never know with these guys. One thing I've learned, and you guys know, is never doubt a world-class athlete, right? Whatever sport it is.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't doubt these guys. They do amazing things that we just don't see. And maybe this is what he's going to do. I mean, at his age, the injury, I don't see it, but it wouldn't shock me that much if he does come back. But we'll see. Anyway, you know where you can catch me, CP7NY on Twitter, X, the shows at Talking Rivals, at Liftoff Jets, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, I guess you never know. I mean, they're talking the end of the season. We'll say the only other thing I could think of that was similar as a kid. I remember Patrick Ewing had got injured. I was in Milwaukee. I want to say it was in 1997, and they thought he wouldn't come back. And he stupidly, it was a wrist injury, if I'm not mistaken. Then when he came back in the second round of the playoffs, and it was like he shouldn't have came back. And it was the Knicks and Pacers in the second round in the 98 playoffs, and he clearly should not have come back. So I hope if Aaron Rodgers comes back at the end of the season and it's worth it, we don't see something like that where he came back probably a month or two too soon. But like you said, you never know. But obviously, great stuff, Chris, as always. And Justin, I turn it over to you. Obviously, you segued to our 3 locks of the week from you and some closing thoughts and anything else. Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you guys once again for another great week. So last week, a little bit of a rough week. We went 1-2. We nailed the under on the Giants and Commanders. 37.5 was the number. Nailed that by a wide margin. I did have Amari Cooper over 63.5 receiving yards. That did not pan out. He had 2 catches for 24 yards. And Devontae Smith on Sunday Night Football, his number was at 53.5. Took the over. Unfortunately, he only had 49 yards, so he missed it by a sliver on that one. So for Week 8, we're going to start with Travis Etienne. Over 65.5 rushing yards. I think that's a low number against that Pittsburgh run defense. I think, like I mentioned when we were talking about that pick, when picking that game, I think that's going to be Jacksonville's formula to success this week. Ground and pound with Travis Etienne and run off with some play action for Trevor Lawrence. So give me the over 65.5 rushing yards. Number 2, we're sticking in the run game. Give me Breece Hall over 71.5 rushing yards. I would probably even take this number at 150.
Wow.
I think we see the first real massive game from Breece Hall, and I think this is going to be one of those games. He touches the ball 25, 30 times, and I could certainly see him hitting the triple digits and hitting it with relative ease. I mean, that Giant run defense is atrocious, and I think Nathaniel Hackett is going to take advantage of that, especially knowing the type of weather we're in for on Sunday. It's going to be a lot of run game, and I think the Jets are going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to exploit the blitzing, because if the Giants blitz and don't stay committed to their lanes, Breece Hall's going to hit the second level, and at that point he's basically unstoppable. So give me Breece Hall over 71.5 rushing yards. Number 3, we're going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs and Travis Kelce to go over 7.5 receptions. I think that's one of the easier picks you could even make. I wouldn't be surprised if you hit 10 by halftime, honestly. So those are the 3 locks of the week. Obviously, baseball banter, previewed the World Series. Next episode will be discussing games 1 and 2, probably recorded sometime Sunday. And then look forward to games 3, 4, and 5. Like Chris said, we might be in for an epic series. I mean, game 1 certainly lived up to the billing. And for those who say, "Oh, I don't care because it's Texas versus Arizona," well, if you don't care about the World Series, do you really love the sport of baseball? Listen, I know the ratings might not end up being the greatest, but if you love the game of baseball, all you want is an exciting World Series. No matter what 2 teams are in it, even if it's not the biggest markets, even if it's not Dodgers Yankees or Cardinals Yankees, getting the
Red Sox Cardinals a few years ago, sure.
Exactly, right? You're getting those massive markets. All you want is an exciting World Series. We got an absolutely exciting game 1. The Corey Seager home run off Paul Sewald to tie the game. And of course, Adolis Garcia wins it in the bottom half of the 11th inning to give the Rangers a 1-0 lead. So I look forward to recapping that as well. And obviously, we'll talk about the champion next time we're on.
We definitely will. We'll definitely talk a lot about the series, certainly. Next week, 2 weeks from now, and next week, TBK and I will be doing the pre-show. But, we didn't save the best for last, but we saved the biggest for last here. And obviously, we closed the show out with you, the brute force, Brad Weiss. And I turn it over to you. Obviously, it was a birthday since we last spoke. Obviously, happy birthday to you as well. And I know I see some of the things here early on. So for those that are listening and watching, it is your closing thoughts. You know what time it is. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, TBK, Justin, Chris, Randy Dillon, Rob Rusk, everybody who was here, John Gonzalez, Ron, everybody else.
Gotta give Ron a big shout out. Yeah, Beans, our buddy Beans. Yep.
Yeah, so a bunch of guys tuned in tonight. So let's thank everybody for your support and thank you for watching the show. You can follow me on social media at BWeiss20 and at Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram, searching on Twitter or X at Brad Weiss20 and Facebook Bradley Weiss. So quickly, I want to thank the Long Island Nets for a great Fan Fest clinic and event today. It was great. A lot of people turned out to see the Long Island Nets. Some of their players came down, coaches. We got to meet them and have a good time. So I want to thank the Long Island Nets for that. And as we see, so the next time we'll be on the show, Tom, the college basketball season will begin to be underway with some exhibition games. And actually, Mr. Cordia played an exhibition game today, so they were in action. And other teams will be. St. Joe's going to be playing Hofstra.
I know our old friends at Pace are playing St. John's this
yeah, so there's a lot of things going on. So by the time we get back on the show, there's going to be a lot to talk about with college basketball. And it'll only be a few days away from high school basketball the next time we come on. So a lot to talk about for sure. I actually just heard John Perez calling a football game the other day on Varsity Media. So I want to give him a shout out. He's doing a great job. And
yes, John is great.
So I want to give him a shout out. But I do want to finish on the notes because unfortunately the time has come once again. You guys can see it on the back. Okay. It is the inaugural new edition. Okay. The new season of Dolan Time here on the Sports Report. And unfortunately, we got to talk about the New York Knicks because they're back. They're in action, okay, and they are a team that I have to talk about. So they lost the first game of the season to the Celtics. They blew a damn lead late in the game. They couldn't make a damn free throw, which once again, for years and years, they cannot make free throws. They're free, all right, and you're supposed to practice them. I mean, Tom Thibodeau, I guess he doesn't practice free throws because clearly they never are good in that situation. Today they did a better job late in the game of making the free throws, but the game shouldn't even been close. I mean, come on. I mean, they almost lost the Atlanta Hawks on the road, who are Atlanta Hawks who don't play no defense. I mean, they really are the New York Knicks. I mean, some people are talking about them being a top 3 team in the East. They do not look like it to me. They still got leaps and bounds to take. They still got to get better play from Randall, better play from their bench unit. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with the Knicks, but in the end, I'm going to keep it to that and say that they have a lot of work to do, as do the Brooklyn Nets, as do a lot of teams in the NBA, but the season's just underway. So we will see when we come back on the progress of the NBA season as well, going forward with baseball. Obviously, like we said, football season. And hopefully by the time we're back, Tom, I'm going to be a decent amount of games over 500. We're going to talk about me for picks.
Slick there.
So let's make sure we talk about that. And I want to thank everybody for another great week of the show. This week is actually an off weekend for me, which is nice. So the weekend after, I'm in Westchester County for a tournament.
Oh, so it's actually good timing that you're getting the week off.
Yeah, it's going to be a long weekend for me that weekend. So that'll be good. Then. So, but again, I'm looking forward to all the things with basketball, football, and the rest of the things going on in the world of sports. It's truly, I mean, October and late October is truly a great time in sports. So it's exciting to see all these different sports at the peak right now and some sports starting. So it's a good time in sports. It's a good time to be on the sports. So thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. It's a great time. You think about now, baseball goes into November now. So you have baseball, and baseball hot stove heats up. You got the NBA just started this past week. You've got obviously the NFL. We're now getting into the middle of the season. You know, you got the NHL that we'll get into that started, but also for us locally, Brad, college basketball. So we'll have all of our schools, you know, SJLI, of course, who played John Jay twice. I think that's the most quirkiest thing in the schedule. 5 towns. We're going to have coverage of the 5 towns teams coming up here in a few weeks once I get back to my regular schedule, which is going to happen. And that's going to be right in time for those teams to come back on and off the court. And so we have in the high school season and our buddy John Perez. So a lot going on here, but obviously I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. If you're on the internet radio, you left us and you're going to TBK's marathon. Also want to wish my brother Brian a happy birthday. His birthday is tomorrow, and he is a lucky man to be alive because he was in a bike accident. He never didn't even know he rode a bike, and he was on a bike in another country, and he's all right. He's fine. So that's good. Good news, but happy birthday to him. But I'll be back here also Monday afternoon, Monday evening, UK time with Lucas Jackson. And Lucas will be talking about Bolton Town Wrestling. Tuesday and Halloween, I'll be here with Cyrus, the It Factor. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we have people popping in back in. So you missed the show. So you definitely missed out. But in the meantime, we were here with TBK, the Baltimore Kid, the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. Justin Gianelli left us. He was the host of the Baseball Banter. Randy Dillons from the Hockey Fan Chat, Chris Pizzea, the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, and the Brute Force, Bradley Weiss, the legendary SJLI Golden Eagle, Level Up, Long Island Nets coach, and also the head coach of the Plainview JFK boys JV basketball team, also assistant coach on the varsity team. And John Gonzalez, thank you for the kind words. Also, if you haven't yet, join the Sports Authorities group on Facebook and watch us anytime on the link below. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Thank you. Be safe out there. Enjoy the games. And I'll be back with everybody here Monday afternoon.